Chapter 583. Murong Xiaorui looked gentle and refined, but the aura that spread out from his body was extremely sharp, causing the spectators nearby to hold their breaths. As expected of the number one person in the Murong family's younger generation. As Murong Xiaorui's aura spread out, the spectators in the square exclaimed in admiration. Even the experts on the high platform nodded their heads. However, Gongsun Bao did not take the aura that spread out from Murong Xiaorui's body to heart. He twisted the girl's neck slightly, and a faint electric glow flashed on the scimitar in his hand. As the electric glow flashed, even the surrounding space would temporarily distort. Ordinary people would not be able to detect it. At this moment, the surrounding square was completely silent. It was deathly silent. The entire square was at daggers drawn as everyone's gazes were fixed on the two of them. They did not look away, afraid that they would miss any moment. Cough! Among the surrounding spectators, a young man finally could not endure the gradually intensifying pressure in that hostile atmosphere. He coughed in response. It was this cough that caused the tense atmosphere to explode. Whoosh! At the same time, Murong Xiaorui attacked. His figure was as fast as lightning, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the vacuum. The runes on the long sword in his hand exploded, and a sword ray shot out, piercing toward Gongsun Bao. Whoosh! The sword ray swept across the sky, and the energy at the tip of the sword fluctuated. Circles of sword ray energy rippled out, radiating a large area. The aura was extremely sharp. Gongsun Bao was expressionless when he saw the sword ray piercing over and the sharp aura spreading out. His gaze became even sharper. Clang! Just as the sword ray pierced over, Gongsun Bao spun the scimitar in his hand and accurately blocked the sword tip with the curved back of the scimitar. The two energy ripples instantly tore the air apart. The sharp sound of the energy breaking through the wind swept out, causing the dust on the square to fill the sky. Crackle! At the same time, an electric glow spread out from Gongsun Bao's scimitar and directly hit the sword tip, causing the latter's sword tip to tremble violently. Murong Xiaorui's expression also changed greatly. Swish, swish! In an instant, Murong Xiaorui spun the Permethos sword in his hand and retreated a few steps. In an extremely short period of time, the Permethos sword in his hand shot out more than 10 sword rays. Every sword gleam that shot out paused in midair for a brief moment. The 12th sword gleam shot out, forming a row of illusory sword gleams. They were so real that they looked like phoenixes spreading their wings. Their might wreaked havoc in the sky. It's the Murong family's sword technique, 12 Phoenix Kill. Its power is astonishing, and it's said that even martial kings find it hard to cultivate it. I didn't expect Murong Xiaorui to have already cultivated it. As Murong Xiaorui executed the extraordinary sword technique, it immediately caused many exclamations. 12 Phoenix Kill! Murong Xiaorui shouted as he waved the Permethos sword in his hand. 12 sword rays channeled heaven and earth's energy. The 12 sword rays were covered in runes and dazzling as they emitted thunderous buzzing sounds, causing the square to tremble and space to ripple. The sword rays were dazzling and had a sharp aura as they swept towards Gongsun Bao. There was no doubt that Murong Xiaorui's sword technique was powerful. Coupled with his talisman weapon and his own cultivation, its power was terrifying. It caused the expressions of the surrounding spectators to change. Some of the experts on the high platform were also shocked. Many of them inwardly trembled. When they were young, when did they have such cultivation? Seeing Murong Xiaorui's 12 sword rays, Gongsun Bao's expression turned serious. He waved the machete in his hand, and in an instant, the machete spun like a ring. Lightning and runes intertwined and formed a huge light screen that blocked the 12 sword rays. The 12 sword rays were very powerful and could even communicate with heaven and earth's energy. It caused the light ring formed by Gongsun Bao's machete to show signs of cracking. When the two energies collided, the shockingly dazzling rune energy ripples soared into the sky. It was dazzling and contained destruction. Break! Murong Xiaorui shouted as he used all his strength to suppress Gongsun Bao with the 12 sword rays. Streaks of sword rays suppressed Gongsun Bao's aura and runes shot out. Being suppressed, Gong Sun Bao's aura became weaker and weaker. The light ring on the machete also looked like it was about to crack. However, at this moment, Gong Sun Bao looked at Murong Xiaorui outside the light screen and said with a faint smile, "Martial Marquis at the peak of the Nirvana realm. Looks like this is your full strength. That's all you've got." As soon as he said that, the light shield of the machete in Gong Sun Bao's hand cracked on its own. It actually stopped defending and allowed the 12 sword rays to pierce down. Murong Xiaorui was confused, but he didn't want to let go of this opportunity. The 12 sword rays connected and exploded with a dazzling light. The sword rays overflowed into the sky and crushed down. Huff! Huff! At this moment, countless people held their breaths as they waited. The outcome was about to be decided. Du Xiaofu sat upright and looked indifferently at the square. There seemed to be a faint helplessness on his face. Buzz! Buzz! The 12 sword rays resonated with the wind and thunder, and their power made everyone's heart tremble. The power was too strong and could suppress and destroy everything. However, in the next instant, the 12 sword lights suddenly stopped as they swept down. Everyone watched as the machete in Gong Sun Bao's hand exploded with a dazzling light again. Streaks of lightning that could be seen with the naked eye spread out like a forked tree and trapped Murong Xiaorui's 12 sword rays. "You're weaker than I thought. It's not enough. It's far from enough." At this moment, the coldness in Gong Sun Bao's sharp eyes surged out without hiding. The machete surged, and the lightning wreaked havoc. Subsequently, the 12 sword rays were destroyed, and they turned into broken runes that soared into the sky. Boom! At the same time, Gong Sun Bao punched out with his left hand. There was sizzling lightning flashing on his fist. It was as strong as lightning, as fast as lightning, and as powerful as lightning. Together with the rolling lightning force, it landed on Murong Xiaorui's chest. Bam, bam, bam! The defense on Murong Xiaorui's body was destroyed. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and his face instantly turned pale. His body then flew away like a kite with a broken string. Heavens, Murong Xiaorui lost! This result shocked everyone. Murong Xiaorui's loss wasn't something that many people would be surprised about. However, the fact that he lost so quickly shocked everyone. Die! Murong Xiaorui's body was still flying away. Gong Sun Bao's eyes were filled with killing intent, and he was already prepared. The lightning on the machete in his hand spun out like a lightning wheel and let out a faint thunderous sound. It caused the space to tremble, and the lightning flashed densely with destruction. At this moment, Murong Xiaorui couldn't dodge at all. If he was swept away, he would probably die on the spot. It was obvious that Gong Sun Bao's goal was to kill him on the spot. "Stop! We admit defeat!" At this moment, Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanin shouted. How could they not see Gong Sun Bao's goal? Murong Xiaorui was the Murong family's only hope now. Even if they had to leave half of the Murong family behind, they definitely couldn't lose Murong Xiaorui. What's more, how could Murong Hanlin and Murong Hankin watch their own bloodline disappear before their eyes? Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, two figures had already flown into the sky. Two vast auras surged and rushed toward the square in an instant. Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanin, it's agreed that the younger generation is responsible for their own life and death. Don't interfere! At the same time, as Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanin leaped out, Gong Sun Chongkong and another elder from the Gong Sun family appeared in front of them. They were already prepared and definitely wouldn't let Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanin save them. One of the goals of this competition was to kill the Murong family's number one person in the younger generation on the spot, and break the Murong family's hope. Gong Sun Chongkong, you're deliberately trying to kill me. I'm not done with you. The roar resounded throughout the entire fertile field city. At this moment, the aura that erupted in the sky was on a completely different level compared to the younger generation that had just fought. The four of them instantly exchanged blows. Four terrifying auras erupted, causing the entire space to seemingly freeze. Rumble. High up in the sky, the chaotic space was filled with boundless energy. Dazzling runes surged out endlessly, forming a vacuum domain that not many people could peek inside. The experts from the two families have made their move. The square was in an uproar. Countless eyes were filled with shock. The pressure that spread from the sky made the surrounding creatures tremble. Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanin were blocked. Gongsun Bao's face was filled with killing intent. The scimitar in his hand cut through the space and instantly arrived in front of Murong Xiaorui. Everything happened in a flash. Countless eyes trembled at this moment and sucked in a breath of cold air from Murong Xiaorui. Whoosh! At this moment, under countless breathless gazes, a purple-robed figure appeared like a ghost in front of Murong Xiaorui, who was flying horizontally. With a slight wave of his hand and a sweep of his long sleeve, he directly swept Gongsun Bao's terrifying scimitar to the side under countless shocked gazes. Shi-la-la, the scimitar spun and cut open arc-shaped cracks on the ground in the square. For a moment, sand and stones flew everywhere, and gravel shot out. Gongsun Bao's face changed in shock as he condensed his hand seals. With a thought, the scimitar returned to his hand as he stared at the purple-robed figure that suddenly appeared. Chapter 584. Rumble. High up in the sky, the four experts clashed as if they were going to overturn the entire sky. However, the four of them separated as soon as they touched each other. Sensing the change below, the four of them flew out, and their gazes landed on the purple-robed figure who had suddenly appeared. At this moment, the gazes of the entire square had all landed on the purple-robed figure. His face was firm and determined, and he had a faint smile on his face. What was particularly eye-catching was the mysterious broadsword wrapped in a purple cloth on his back. It's the fool. Why did he go up? Murong Xiangla looked at Du Xiaofu, who had disappeared from her side and appeared on the square. She couldn't help but look at the empty seat beside her in shock. Murong Xiangla's eyes were filled with disbelief. She had just seen with her own eyes that the fool had easily blocked Gongsun Bao's attack. That was an opponent that even brother Xiaorui couldn't fight against. Who is that young man to the Murong clan? He actually blocked Gongsun Bao's attack. Where did he come from? He's so strong. He doesn't seem to be a young man from the Murong clan. Did the Murong clan invite him? After a moment of shock, whispers of doubt began to spread all around the square. The experts from the Murong clan, the Gongsun clan, and the Wu clan on the high platform were all looking at the purple-robed young man. At this moment, no one noticed that when the purple-robed young man on the high platform heard the purple-robed young man's voice, the handsome young man who even Gongsun Bao had to respect suddenly trembled. He ignored the disdainful gazes around him and instantly shone brightly. Bang! Murong Xiaorui fell hard on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. The Prometheus sword also fell to the side. When Murong Xiaorui struggled to get up, he looked at the purple-robed figure in front of him with shock on his pale face. The purple-robed young man was naturally Du Xiaofu. At this critical moment, even if it was from Murong Yuru and Dai Xingyu, he could only step forward bravely. Who are you? Looking at the purple-robed young man before him, Gongsun Bao frowned. He had a vague feeling that the purple-robed young man, who was a few years younger than him, was not someone to be trifled with. Du Xiaofu looked at Gongsun Bao and said, Who I am is not important. You have already won, so there is no need to kill. To be honest, Du Xiaofu did not want to get involved in the affairs of the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan. These two clans most likely had martial royal realm experts and several martial king realm experts. He was only a martial marquis. If it was not for the critical moment just now, he would not have wanted to get involved. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Gongsun Bao's cold eyes fell on Du Xiaofu. He said in a low voice, This is between the Murongs and the Gongsun family. No matter who you are, you have no right to interfere. I'm afraid you don't have the strength to either. I think you'd better leave. You have already won. Let's forget about it. After saying that, Du Xiaofu ignored Gongsun Bao and slowly walked to Murong Xiaorui's side. Murong Xiaorui's face was pale and filled with shock. He wanted to take Murong Xiaorui away. Chi! The aura in the space fluctuated. Gongsun Bao's figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu like a ghost, blocking Du Xiaofu from leaving. His face was cold as he said coldly, "Brat, this is Fertile City. No matter who you are, you better know your place." Hearing that, Du Xiaofu looked up slightly. His clear eyes gradually darkened. He looked straight at Gong Sunbao and said, "What? You want to fight me? In today's battle, you are responsible for your own life and death. Between you and Murong Xiaorui, only one can go down. If you don't believe me, you can try." Gong Sunbao's eyes were filled with undisguised coldness. However, when he looked at the purple-robed young man, he trembled for no reason. If he didn't feel that the purple-robed young man wasn't someone to be trifled with, and was afraid that he would fail miserably, he would have already attacked. Why would he still talk nonsense? Hearing that, Du Xiaofu's eyes swept across the high platform in front of him and landed on Murong Hanlin, Murong Honkin, and the other three who were watching silently. His eyebrows twitched slightly. He then continued to look at Gong Sunbao and said, "How about this, you have one? You have one half of the Murong family. Why don't you fight with me again? If you win, the entire Murong family will belong to your Gong Sun family except for the people. I won't stop you if you want to take Murong Xiurui's life. However, if you lose, the other half of the Murong family will leave. What do you think?" As his voice fell, Du Xiaofu seemed to have deliberately mixed in his xianqi so that the surroundings could be heard clearly. At this moment, when they heard Du Xiaofu's words, some were surprised, some were shocked, and some were puzzled. In the end, whispers instantly resounded. "Who is that purple-robed young man? What a big tone! He can actually make decisions for the Murong family? I'm afraid his relationship with the Murong family isn't simple. Could it be that the purple-robed young man has the confidence to win against Gong Sunbao?" Discussions spread out and whispers filled the square. High up in the sky, Murong Honkin, Murong Hanlin, and Gong Sun Changkong's faces were all changing. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Gong Sunbao's eyes were filled with confusion for a short while. Then, he looked at his father, Gong Sun Changkong, who was high up in the sky. Du Xiaofu's words were obviously very attractive to Gong Sunbao. If he won, he would be able to obtain the entire Murong family. Without a doubt, he would be able to completely destroy the Murong family and even get Murong Xiurui's life. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't win, it would only mean that he didn't win. There would be no loss at all. Naturally, Gong Sunbao was tempted. High up in the sky, Gong Sun Changkong was also at a loss for a moment. He could be considered an old fox, but in the face of this matter, he really didn't know how to choose. Gong Sun Changkong naturally had confidence in his son. However, that strange purple-robed young man dared to speak so arrogantly. He was afraid that he had some ability. After pondering for a while, Gong Sun Changkong looked at Murong Hanlin and asked in a deep voice, "Murong Hanlin, can that young man's words represent you?" Murong Hanlin and Murong Honkin looked at each other. At this time, it was related to the entire Murong family. They had to bet the entire Murong family on a strange purple-robed youth. For them, this choice was much more difficult than Gong Sun Changkong. All the experts in the Murong family group looked at each other. Some were worried, some were doubtful, and some were afraid. Everyone in the Murong family was extremely tense at this moment. They didn't know if the patriarch would bet the entire Murong family on a strange young man. This was definitely too risky. That little brother. Murong Hanlin's gaze secretly moved as he looked at Du Xiaofu and Murong Xiurui in the square below. Then, he looked at Gong Sun Changkong as if he had made a huge decision. He gritted his teeth and said, "He can represent me and the Murong family. Who is that purple-robed young man?" As Murong Hanlin's words fell, the surrounding square once again burst into discussion. The Murong family was willing to bet the entire family on that purple-robed young man. Did they really think that the purple-robed young man could defeat Gong Sunbao? If so, why didn't they deal with Gong Sunbao earlier? At this moment, the people of the Murong family were even more shocked than the surrounding onlookers. They didn't expect that the patriarch would really bet the entire Murong family on a strange young man of unknown origin. On the high platform, the handsome young man from the Gong Sun family had his eyes fixed on Du Xiaofu and didn't look away at all. "Young man, if that's the case, then do it. Perhaps I should thank you? If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to get the entire Murong family. Gong Sun Bao sneered as he looked at Du Xiaofu. He was a disciple of the Divine Light Court. Although he couldn't be compared to the influential figures in the Divine Light Court, he was still extraordinarily talented and could be considered a top figure among his peers in the Divine Light Court. Although this purple-robed young man seemed to have some ability, Gong Sun Bao really didn't believe in himself. He couldn't do anything to this young man who was a few years younger than him. Du Xiaofu ignored Gong Sun Bao and lowered his head to signal to Murong Xiu-rui, who was beside him, and said, "You can leave if you want. No matter who you are, the Murong family is with you." "Please, thank you." Murong Xiu-rui looked at Du Xiaofu and slowly walked down the square after he finished speaking. "Humph, Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanken, if you interfere again, I won't be polite." As Gong Sun Changkong's voice fell, a cold smile appeared on his face. With a sweep of his long sleeve, he rushed back to the high platform and sat down to wait for the Murong family to be taken into his pocket. Gong Sun Changkong was very clear about his son's strength. He was a martial marquis at the Nirvana realm. Coming from the Divine Light Court, he could compete with opponents who were at a higher realm in the outside world. Could it be that he really couldn't deal with this purple-robed young man who looked a few years younger? Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanken looked at each other again, and could only rush back to the high platform. At this moment, in the entire Murong family, the two of them were under the greatest pressure. If Du Xiaofu was defeated, the result was something that Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanken didn't dare to imagine. At this moment, Du Xiaofu looked at Gong Sun Bao again. However, his expression was relaxed and there wasn't the slightest trace of seriousness. He looked at Gong Sun Bao and said, "If you want to win the entire Murong family, I'm afraid you don't have much hope. Do it. Tomorrow, Xiao Yu will explode. Let me inform you all first and ask for flowers to thank you all." Chapter 585. Stop playing tricks. This is Fertile City. It's not a place for you to behave atrociously. Gong Sun Bao snorted, his eyes cold. He was a famous disciple of the Divine Light Court. He had been cultivating for nearly 10 years and had learned many secret techniques. In Fertile City, he was the strongest among the younger generation. He had his own pride and arrogance. Boom! Gong Sun Bao made his move. The surrounding space trembled, and the talisman patterns on his body flickered with lightning. In the end, he turned into a fierce bird made of lightning. Gee! The fierce bird looked like an eagle, but it wasn't an eagle. It looked like a wild goose, but it wasn't a wild goose. Its talisman patterns were bright and dazzling, and it flashed with lightning. It charged toward Du Xiaofu ferociously. It was obvious that Gong Sun Bao was more serious when dealing with Du Xiaofu than Murong Xiu-rui. Gong Sun Bao could also tell that the purple-robed young man was extraordinary, so he didn't dare to be careless. This was enough to show that Gong Sun Bao wasn't a fool. Looking at the beast shadow that Gong Sun Bao had condensed with his beast energy, Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly. Among the thousands of birds, how many could be compared to the golden rock? Du Xiaofu stretched out his hands slightly and drew an arc in the air. Golden talisman patterns wrapped around his hands as if they were condensing into a looming trace of golden wings on his arms. Then, he directly fanned at the ferocious bird's shadow with an overbearing momentum. As the two exchanged blows, all eyes were fixed on them. The purple-robed young man waved his hand in a seemingly slow but actually fast exchange of blows. The purple-robed young man waved his hand and immediately crushed the shadow of the ferocious bird. The moment the two collided, lightning flashed, and dazzling talisman patterns flashed. Crackle! At this moment, countless eyes trembled. The fierce bird shadow was smashed into pieces. It couldn't even withstand a single blow. Pfft! Gong Sun Bao spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock, and his heart was filled with complicated emotions. At the same time, the curved blade in his hand, which was also a top-grade talisman weapon, slashed down. The beast energy that Gong Sun Bao had just condensed was a test. At the same time, it was also a feint. His real killing move was this blade. Gong Sun Bao knew that the purple-robed young man was not ordinary, so he wanted to use illusions to block his opponent. Then, he would use his killer move to kill his opponent directly. This could be considered as embarrassing for the Murong family. In Gong Sun Bao's expectation, this unexpected killing move would at least severely injure the purple-robed brat. He had used this move many times, and it had never failed him. Many people who were stronger than him had been fooled and suffered a great loss in the end. Thunder Extermination Saber! As the saber light slashed down, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky above the square. Lightning flashed on the saber light, forming a blazing ball of lightning. A powerful destructive power erupted, causing the entire square and the void to tremble. That purple-robed brat has been tricked. This is bad. The blade light seemed to shatter the space. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and the aura was destroyed. At this moment, many people gasped for Du Xiaofu. Oh my God, am I seeing things? Impossible, how can he be so strong? In that short instant, those who had just sucked in a breath of cold air because of Du Xiaofu were all flabbergasted in the next instant. Under the dumbfounded gazes, the purple-robed young man was not afraid of Gong Sun Bao's terrifying saber. He waved his hand, and the golden Xianqi rune on his hand was not afraid of the destructive saber light or the power of lightning. He grabbed Gong Sun Bao's saber as if he was taking something out of his pocket. Crackle! The space fluctuated and the lightning wreaked havoc. However, it was useless in front of Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's hand grabbed Gong Sun Bao's saber in front of countless gazes. Suddenly, it was as if the space was frozen. The terrifying saber light was destroyed, and the saber in Gong Sun Bao's hand could no longer move forward. The purple-robed young man was able to resist Gong Sun Bao's extraordinary practitioner weapon with his bare hand. It was a killing move. How shocking was this? How powerful must he be to be able to do this? Rumble! Gong Sun Bao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, fear finally appeared in his proud and confident eyes. The Xianqi in his body surged, and he wanted to break free from the saber in his hand. The aura of a martial lord at the peak of the Nirvana realm suddenly swept out like a storm. It caused the aura in the square to soar into the sky. It was as if a tornado had appeared out of nowhere. Rumbling sounds echoed. However, no matter how Gong Sun Bao struggled, the saber in his hand was grabbed by Du Xiaofu, and he could not move at all. If you want the Murong family, it seems like you can only wait for the next time. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly. His cold eyes were slightly cold, and there was a domineering aura that was integrated into his blood and bone marrow. In the storm of energy, he was like a rock that could not be shaken at all. He reached out his left hand, which was wrapped in golden light and surrounded by runes. Boom! His left hand clenched into a fist and punched out. It was as powerful as thunder, and it caused the surrounding space to tremble slightly. Countless people held their breaths as they waited. As their hearts trembled violently, the fist landed directly on Gong Sun Bao's chest. Pfft. As the fist landed, the defense on Gong Sun Bao's body was smashed into pieces. Then, blood spurted out from his mouth, and his clothes were torn apart. Gong Sun Bao's body was also sent flying. However, the saber in his hand landed in Du Xiaofu's hand. You don't want it anymore? Thank you. Du Xiaofu held Gong Sun Bao's saber practitioner weapon. This practitioner weapon was not ordinary. For Du Xiaofu, no matter what the occasion was, as long as he had something in his hands, it was simply too difficult for him to hand it over. It was almost an impossible thing. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu did not hesitate. With a smile on his face, he formed a hand seal and erased the seal on the saber. Then, under everyone's gaze, he put Gong Sun Bao's saber practitioner weapon into his own qianquan bag. Everyone's eyes were trembling. In just one move, the purple-robed young man had not only taken Gong Sun Bao's practitioner weapon, but also severely injured Gong Sun Bao. It was really shocking. At this moment, the people on the high platform were even more shocked. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets, especially the people from the Murong family. At this moment, the people from the Gongsun family all had ugly looks in their eyes. Tap, 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 tap. Gongsun Bao did not fall to the ground. After dozens of steps, he steadied himself. With each step, the ground under his feet cracked. Finally, he stopped retreating. Pfft! Gongsun Bao's face was ashen and gloomy. The bones in his chest seemed to be broken, and he felt a sharp pain. Seeing that his practitioner weapon had been taken away and the seal erased, he immediately spat out another mouthful of blood. Bastard! Unable to bear it any longer, Gongsun Bao roared and formed a hand seal. Immediately, the mysterious runes on the talisman flickered and formed a huge gray python. The python surrounded Gongsun Bao and gave off a dazzling light, making him look like a terrifying lord. Hiss, hiss! The gray python spat out its tongue with the aura of thunder and lightning, as if it could swallow and spit out thunder and lightning. A terrifying pressure spread out, making the hearts of the onlookers tremble. They all changed their expressions and secretly praised Gongsun Bao for being the number one person of the younger generation. Kill! Gongsun Bao was furious. He activated his pulse spirit and roared. With a terrifying aura, the pulse spirit rushed out like a dragon soaring into the sky. Along with the destructive aura of thunder and lightning, it suddenly swooped down from the sky and covered Du Xiaofu instantly. At this moment, Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head. His eyes were domineering and cold. Boom! Just as the giant python-veined spirit ferociously roared and arrived in front of him, Du Xiaofu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced and punched out. Golden light flashed like thunder. Bang, bang! Gongsun Bao's python pulse spirit was extremely powerful. It was so fierce and domineering just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, Du Xiaofu's punch smashed it into pieces. It exploded from head to tail and emitted electric light. Rumble! The pulse spirit exploded, and Gongsun Bao's figure was revealed. He staggered and fell to the ground. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were completely shocked. Bang! Du Xiaofu stepped on Gongsun Bao's chest and broke his defense. Gongsun Bao's body was also stepped into the crack in the ground. Pfft! Dust rose and gravel shot out. Gongsun Bao spat out blood. Gongsun Bao was defeated. He was defeated so miserably. Gongsun Bao was unable to withstand a single blow from the purple-robed young man. In the surrounding square, countless people were stunned for a short period of time. Then, the sound of people sucking in cold breaths rang out one after another. Gongsun Bao, the number one person of the younger generation in Fertile Field City and a disciple of the Divine Light Court, was unable to withstand a single blow from the purple-robed young man. That purple-robed young man had been playing it down all along. With such strength, he was actually so powerful. That idiot's strength is so strong. In the Murong family, Murong Xiangna looked at Du Xiaofu in the square. Her pure eyes were bulging like a frog. She was too shocked. She never knew that the fool was so powerful. At this time, Murong Qinjun, who had returned to the high platform, looked at the purple-robed young man in the square and could not help but tremble. Chapter 586. He's really well hidden. Murong Hankin was shocked. Back then, he had some doubts. If Lin Fan was really an ordinary young man, how could he be so calm and composed under the invisible aura of a martial king realm perfection? Du Xiaofu's aura was so restrained that no one could see through it. However, the temperament of his body could not be restrained. Murong Hanlin clenched his fists and loosened them slightly. He did not say anything, but it was not difficult to see that there was an extremely unsettled fluctuation in his eyes. We won! We won! After a short moment of silence, the experts of the Murong family became excited. Even the old man of the Murong family was no exception. His entire body was trembling. You've lost! Du Xiaofu let go of Gongsun Bao. He waved his long sleeves and was about to turn and leave. After the shock and fear in Gongsun Bao's eyes, he did not dare to be resentful. However, at this moment, he no longer had the strength to continue fighting. He could only watch as Du Xiaofu turned and left. Not bad, not bad at all. I didn't expect you to reach this step in such a short time. A faint voice was heard. It was filled with an innate pride. At the same time, on the high platform, an unusually handsome young man of the Gongsun family stood up. The young man looked to be about 18 or 19 years old. The corner of his mouth was filled with a faint pride. A smile spread across his face. However, at this moment, when he looked at Du Xiaofu, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Du Xiaofu immediately raised his head and looked at the high platform. Looking at the 18 or 19-year-old man who had stood up, there was a slight fluctuation on his calm face. He muttered two words. Gu Yu. The unusually handsome young man was Gu Yu of the Divine Light Court, who had fought with Du Xiaofu in the Tianwu Academy. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was also surprised to meet Gu Yu again in Fertile City. Then, his gaze became slightly gloomy. Although he had beaten Gu Yu up previously, it did not mean that Du Xiaofu had a good impression of him. Gu Yu had injured his elder sister, Du Xiaoman. With Du Xiaofu's temper, it was not too much to beat him up every time he saw him. Qi! As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Yu's feet touched the ground. Then, his body then slowly came down from the high platform. His handsome figure, his extraordinary aura immediately, the surrounding girls who were watching screamed. Does he know him? Everyone's eyes, the Gongsun family's faces. From Gu Yu's words, it seemed that Gongsun Bao Xiaofu and the purple-robed Gongsun. The expressions of the Gongsun family members changed even more. The others in Fertile City did not know Gu Yu's identity, but the experts of the Gongsun family did. The spiritual pulse body was equivalent to an outstanding talent. It was not something that an ordinary outstanding talent could compare to. It was comparable to the human king. In the Light Palace, Gu Yu also had an extremely high status. His strength was extremely powerful, and it was said that he had recently obtained a great opportunity, which allowed him to reach a terrifying level. Gu Yu landed on the ground. His pair of dazzling black eyes, which seemed to be able to see through the past and present, looked at Du Xiaofu indifferently. There was a smile on his face, but there seemed to be some danger and gloominess in his smile. At this moment, although Gu Yu could not completely see through Du Xiaofu's cultivation, he could more or less feel an extremely powerful aura. His heart was filled with disbelief. Back in Tianwu Academy, Du Xiaofu's cultivation level was extremely low. However, at this moment, it seemed to have reached an extremely powerful level. This made Gu Yu secretly shocked. Gu Yu did not stop Du Xiaofu just now because he wanted to see how strong Du Xiaofu's cultivation had become after all these years. He wanted to see if Du Xiaofu was still qualified to make him fight. Being defeated in Tianwu Academy previously was undoubtedly a stain in Gu Yu's life. If he did not defeat Du Xiaofu once, it would be enough to become a demon in his cultivation path. Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Yu. His expression was not any better. However, he immediately restrained his expression and looked at Gu Yu indifferently. He said, What's the matter? You interfered in the matter between the Murong family and the Gongsun family, so I can only interfere. Defeat me. Otherwise, you won't be able to protect the Murong family. Gu Yu looked at Du Xiaofu and a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. Over the past few years, he had clearly matured a lot. This matter is already over. It doesn't have much to do with you, right? Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and looked at Gu Yu. He said, Moreover, you weren't my match back then. Now that you want to fight me, the result will still be the same. It won't change much. Gu Yu was not angry at Du Xiaofu's words. He only shook his head slightly and sneered. So much time has passed. I'm afraid there's a difference between who's stronger and who's weaker now. I know you're the brave God King of the Stone Dragon Empire and the leader of the Heaven Alliance. However, it's a pity that all of this is useless in front of me. You're nothing. Gu Yu was concerned about the matter between the Stone Dragon Empire and the Dark Forest. Strictly speaking, he was only concerned about Du Xiaofu. Gu Yu even knew that Du Xiaofu had once defeated the human king of the Sky Serpent sect, Lu Kuan. However, if he were to fight with Du Xiaofu now, he was confident that he could defeat him. Gu Yu's confidence did not come from his arrogance and conceit. On the contrary, ever since he was defeated so miserably in the Tianwu Academy, he was no longer arrogant and conceited. Therefore, he had benefited greatly over the past few years. At this moment, Gu Yu's confidence came from the Divine Light Court and his hard work and cultivation over the past few years. Over the past few years, in order to defeat Du Xiaofu as soon as possible and resolve the anger in his heart, Gu Yu had worked even harder than usual. In addition to the great opportunity he had obtained this time, Gu Yu's talent was not much lower than a human king's. Therefore, he did not believe that he could not deal with Du Xiaofu, who came from a small place like the Tianwu Academy. Gu Yu paused for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaofu and continued. Today, you only have one battle. You have no other choice. You have interfered in the matter between the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan, so you have to pay the price. The Gongsun clan has already sided with the Divine Light Court. Since you have interfered with the matters of the Divine Light Court. If you don't fight, then not only will you die, I will also guarantee that the entire Murong clan will not live to see tomorrow. Only by defeating me can you leave and protect the Murong clan. You have no other choice. The Gongsun clan has already sided with the Divine Light Court. Hearing Gu Yu's words, the expressions of the people from the Murong clan and the Wu clan changed. Fertile City had always been controlled by the three great clans. If the Gongsun clan sided with the Divine Light Court, then Fertile City would undoubtedly belong to the Divine Light Court in the future. So that handsome young man is from the Divine Light Court. That young man seems to be even stronger than Gongsun Bao. The two sides seem to have a grudge in the past. The people around the square were now much clearer about the relationship between the two main characters. Du Xiaofu did not care about the relationship between the Gongsun clan and the Divine Light Court. It had nothing to do with him. Du Xiaofu's gaze moved slightly as he looked at Gu Yu in front of him. There was some disgust in his eyes, as well as some chilliness. After which, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He raised his head slightly and said to Gu Yu, Actually, the current you is nothing in front of me. Since you still want to ask for a beating, I'll let you continue to remember the feeling from back then. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, which were cold and mocking, Gu Yu's handsome face turned cold. He stared at Du Xiaofu with a murderous look in his eyes. Du Xiaofu's expression did not change at all in the face of Gu Yu's murderous look. He looked straight at Gu Yu, and coldness also surged in his dark eyes. He said, Since you want to fight, then the Gongsun clan is also part of the Divine Light Palace. Let's raise the stakes. If you lose, then the Gongsun clan will be mine in the future. What about you? Are you going to bet on the Murong clan? Gu Yu said coldly as he looked at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said, I think the Tianxia alliance in my hands is enough. Alright, I'll take it that your Tianxia alliance is enough. The result will be the same anyway. Gu Yu smiled coldly, and then he raised his head slightly to look at the elder beside Gongsun Changkong on the high platform. He seemed to be asking for his opinion. The elder's gaze also fell on the two people on the square. He looked at Gu Yu for a few breaths of time, and then he nodded slightly. Alright, it's a deal. Looking at Du Xiaofu again, Gu Yu nodded. Although he was smiling coldly, his murderous look was spreading. Only Gongsun Changkong's expression was not very good. His severely injured son Gongsun Bao had been carried down by a few people from the Gongsun clan. However, at this moment, the Divine Light Court had directly represented the Gongsun family without his consent. This made Gongsun Changkong very unhappy, but he dared not say anything. In front of the experts of the Divine Light Court, he did not even have the right to speak. They're betting the entire Gongsun clan. It seems that the handsome young man must be very extraordinary in the Divine Light Court. That purple-robed young man also seems to be extraordinary. He has some background. The people on the square whispered and discussed in low voices. Then they looked at the square and gradually quieted down. On the high platform, everyone's eyes were fixed on the square. Today was supposed to be a contest between the younger generation of the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan. However, in the end, the most anticipated contestants were two young men who were extremely unfamiliar to the people of Fertile Fields City. The third night watch has arrived, asking for fresh flowers to thank everyone. Chapter 587. However, at this time, everyone knew that the two young men who were about the same age were definitely the top of the younger generation. Even Gong Sun Bao, the number one person among the younger generation in Fertile Fields City, could not compare to these two young men. The battle between these two youths was probably enough to broaden everyone's horizons. On the square, the two youths looked at each other. Two surging auras slowly spread out, both of their auras were overbearing. As the auras within their bodies fluctuated, the temperature around the square began to become abnormally cold, causing people to shiver uncontrollably. Today, I will pay back everything that happened back then. As Gu Yu's cold words fell, his aura fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to solidify. His handsome face turned completely cold. Today, he was going to get back at Tianwu Academy for the humiliation he had suffered back then. You are still not enough. Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Yu and said coldly. He knew that there was no way out today, and he could only fight. There were experts from the Divine Light Court and the Gongsun family. Even the Murong family would not be able to withstand them. Therefore, Du Xiaofu knew that he could only fight. If he did not fight, he would appear to be a coward. His resolute face darkened slightly, and a chill slowly surged in his clear, pitch-black eyes. Hearing Du Xiaofu's disdainful tone and disapproving gaze, Bu Yu's face became more and more sinister. A chill flashed in his eyes, and his aura fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate. He slowly walked towards Du Xiaofu, and said softly, "Whether it is enough or not, you will know soon. Today, I will tell you that your victory last time was only due to luck. But now, what right do you have to fight with me?" As Gu Yu walked out step by step, waves of majestic aura accompanied by rolling thunder and lightning surged out from his body like a volcano. Boom! In an instant, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and a majestic aura swept across the sky of the square. Haha! Because I have already stepped into the Martial King realm and reached the peak of the Martial King realm. I am only one step away from the mysterious level of the Martial King realm. You and I are getting further and further apart. Gu Yu's peak Martial King realm aura swept out. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. The vast aura caused the spectators in the square to tremble violently. That overbearing and destructive aura caused people to tremble in fear. Heavens, he has already reached the peak of the Martial King realm. That handsome young man is only 18 or 19 years old. Outstanding talent, that young man is at least an outstanding talent. Can that purple-robed youth still fight back? Everyone was astonished. An 18 or 19-year-old martial king, what kind of talent was that? It was enough to make him a genius. Oh no, that's a martial king talent! Looking at the commotion caused by Gu Yu, Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanken and the other experts of the Murong family immediately became worried. Can that fool defeat that guy from the Divine Light Court? Murong Xianger's delicate hands clenched into fists again. Martial King Realm! Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Yu in front of him. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, forming a cold arc. He sneered faintly. Martial King Realm, who knew how many he had dealt with. Kid, today, I will repay you tenfold. I will let you know that you will never be able to compare with me. Gu Yu sneered. As his voice fell, his palm suddenly stretched out, as if it was drawing out countless lightning bolts in front of his palm. Streaks of lightning bolts condensed in Gu Yu's palm and turned into a lightning claw. He stomped his foot on the ground and his figure swept into the air. The lightning claw wreaked havoc and directly seized Du Xiaofu. Crackle! The lightning claw swept across the sky. At this time, when Gu Yu used it, it almost tore apart a large area of space. At this moment, if an ordinary martial king realm expert was caught by Gu Yu's claw, it would be enough to turn them into ashes. The power spread out, causing everyone to tremble. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at the lightning claw sweeping over. He sneered and waved his hands slightly. He did not have the slightest intention of dodging. His fist was wrapped in golden runes and fiercely streaked across the air, and then directly collided with Gu Yu's claw. Bang! The claw and fist collided. Faint golden chi and lightning radiance shot out in all directions. The runes in the air shattered, and a terrifying energy shook the square violently. Thump thump! Just as everyone was sucking in a breath of cold air and worrying about Du Xiaofu, they saw Gu Yu, who was in the air, being forced back several steps. On the other hand, Du Xiaofu's body only swayed slightly. However, the cracks on the ground beneath his feet continued to spread. What a strong power! When Gu Yu stabilized his body, his face slightly changed. From Du Xiaofu's fist, the tyrannical power caused his palm to feel numb. After that, Gu Yu sneered. It seemed that he was just testing the waters. His figure flashed, and like a ghost, he swept towards Du Xiaofu. The lightning aura in his hand wreaked havoc, like lightning snakes condensing in the surroundings. A palm strike was extremely tricky as it slammed towards the vital point on Du Xiaofu's head. Rippling carefree steps. Du Xiaofu's feet moved when he saw the former's palm imprint rushing over. His body drifted like a deity, changing unpredictably. Under the fist imprint, it appeared to be extremely dangerous, but he suddenly managed to escape. Coldness flashed once more on Gu Yu's face when he saw Du Xiaofu dodge, and he waved his hand, causing an expanse of flickering lightning glows in midair to condense into an expanse of talisman markings that shot explosively towards Du Xiaofu. Everywhere it passed, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, causing one's heart to palpitate. Whoosh! However, just as the lightning bolt appeared in front of Du Xiaofu sent out a golden palm strike, directly shattering the lightning bolt. It turned into countless flashes of lightning, like countless lightning snakes. In the end, all of them actually drilled into Du Xiaofu's palm and disappeared. Gu Yu originally wanted to use this move to trick Du Xiaofu. If an ordinary person was tricked, their ending would definitely not be good. However, after that, Gu Yu saw that the countless lightning snake-like rays of lightning surged into Du Xiaofu's palm, as if nothing had happened. He couldn't help but be greatly astonished. However, in a short period of time, he once again condensed a mighty attack that swept towards Du Xiaofu. Whoosh! As the two of them exchanged blows, the sky above the plaza had already surged. Golden profound energy radiance and lightning runes wreaked havoc. Everyone in the surroundings held their breaths as they watched, their hearts trembling in fear. Bang bang! The two of them exchanged blows in midair, and for a moment, they seemed to be evenly matched. Dazzling runes flickered, and energy swept out, shaking the plaza and causing the air to rumble. Gu Yu's attacks became fiercer and fiercer, and his aura became fiercer and fiercer. Du Xiaofu's attacks seemed simple, but they were direct and powerful as they swept away his opponent's attacks. Judging from the current situation, this was definitely a peak-level battle that had never appeared in the entire Fertile Field city. The cultivation strength of the two young men could be counted with one's fingers. Many people already knew that Gu Yu's cultivation was at the peak of the martial king realm. However, at this moment, the purple-robed young man was actually able to withstand his attacks. Everyone was amazed, and the people of the Murong family were even more shocked. The battle in the plaza made the younger generation of the entire Fertile Field city speechless. Murong Xiurui, Murong Qinjun, Gong Suning, and the others were all shocked as they watched. The confidence and arrogance in their hearts instantly disappeared. The battle between the two of them could be said to be a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger, causing everyone to be inexplicably shocked. Rumble! The ground of the plaza continued to crack as the two of them collided. The dazzling runes were dazzling, as if they were going to drown the heavens and the earth. These two young men were simply terrifyingly powerful, ridiculously powerful. On the high platform, the eyes of the experts from the three great families trembled. The two young men were too powerful. At such a young age, they already had the momentum to swallow mountains and rivers. They could be called geniuses, and one day, their names would be known throughout the entire Middle region. In the battle circle, Gu Yu's face became more and more unsightly as he fought. It seemed that everything was different from what he had imagined. Du Xiaofu was actually able to contend with him continuously. Whoosh! Suddenly, Gu Yu's face turned cold, and dazzling lightning surged around his body. The lightning flashed with a sizzling sound, causing the surrounding space to shake violently. An indescribable fluctuation appeared in the space, and a terrifying aura swept across the sky. Divine thunderstorm! Gu Yu roared. He condensed a fist and threw it out. Lightning rumbled on his fist, and low explosive sounds continuously resounded in the air, causing the space to tremble violently. It was as if the space itself was about to be blasted apart by this terrifying fist. The terrifying fist was thrown out, and it seemed to be able to destroy everything. It carried a vast and terrifying aura as it rapidly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's entire body seemed to be sluggish. His gaze was tightly fixed on Gu Yu's fist, as if he had suddenly become stupid. His gaze was tightly fixed on Gu Yu's fist, and he did not move at all. Boom! All of this happened too quickly. It was so quick that the spectators in the surrounding plaza had just revealed shocked gazes when the lightning fist, which was covered in lightning, directly landed on Du Xiaofu's chest. Suddenly, lightning overflowed in all directions, and Du Xiaofu's body was directly sent flying, violently smashing into the ground of the plaza. Numerous gullies immediately appeared on the hard ground of the plaza. Gravel shot in all directions, and dust filled the air. The entire plaza was in a mess. Gravel shot out, and cracks spread on the ground. In the next moment, they wrapped around Du Xiaofu, who had just smashed into the ground. Rumble! A low muffled sound rang out like thunder, causing the earth to shake. Countless gravel shot out from the dust, causing chaos, and causing the gazes of the crowd to change greatly. Chapter 588. Originally, many people thought that there would be an astonishing battle between the two of them that would last for a long time. But now, they didn't expect that the purple-robed young man would end up like this after being punched by the handsome young man. Many people in the square and on the high platform were shocked. Gu Yu's fist was clearly extraordinary. This was especially so for the many experts on the high platform. They clearly knew that an ordinary martial king stage mysterious level cultivator would be unable to defend against such a powerful attack. Moreover, Du Xiaofu had been directly hit by it. So what if you have some ability? You're still not a match for others. Fortunately, we didn't use the Murong family as a wager. On the high platform, Murong Qingjuan's face was pale and gloomy. It's best if you're killed directly. On the high platform of the Gongsun family, Gongsun Bao sneered. Everyone in the Gongsun family was smiling at this moment. Idiot, will you be okay? Please don't let anything happen to you. Murong Xianger's delicate face was nervous as she stared at the square with her pure eyes. Murong Hanken frowned slightly as he stared at the square. Murong Hanlin, who was beside him, looked at Murong Hanken's frown and said softly, "Don't worry. If I'm not wrong, little brother Du Xiaofu just had an accident. He should be fine. If he can still stand up, then the people of the Divine Light Court will lose." Hearing this, Murong Hanken seemed to be quite surprised. Big brother rarely praised others, and he had never even praised Murong Xiaorui. He didn't expect that Du Xiaofu, whom he was unfamiliar with, would be so confident. As Murong Hanlin's voice fell, the scattered stones in the square fell and the dust dissipated, gradually revealing the square. Finally, under the numerous gazes from the surroundings, he first saw Gu Yu, who was quietly standing at this moment. At this moment, Gu Yu's body was surrounded by faint lightning. His aura was domineering and powerful. He was unusually handsome and had an extraordinary temperament. Immediately, many girls in the square screamed fanatically. Gu Yu was completely unconcerned with the wild cries of the young ladies around him. His gaze was currently focused intently on the pile of rock fragments that Du Xiaofu had been smashed into just like everyone else. A cold glint flickered within his eyes. He hoped that he would be able to directly kill Du Xiaofu. However, Gu Yu's heart was actually quite strange at this moment. Du Xiaofu seemed to have suddenly become a fool. This caused him to be unable to understand even after much thought. Who would think of other things when facing a strong enemy? Du Yuyu's plan to kill Du Xiaofu, but it seemed that this wish did not come true. Under the gazes of the crowd, the pile of rubble began to shake. Then, the dust moved, and a figure broke out from the rubble. When he saw the figure breaking out of the ground, Gu Yu's eyes twitched with hatred. Under the gaze of countless people, the purple-robed figure, who had just been smashed into the pile of stones, climbed out again at this moment. His body was flashing with lightning, but he was unscathed. This scene stunned everyone. At this moment, as Du Xiaofu walked out with a smile in his eyes, the lightning around him flickered from time to time. It seemed that something was different for no reason. He's fine. He seems to be completely fine. Murong Hanin was stunned. His eyes flickered, and it took him a while to recover from the shock. Murong Hankin could clearly feel the strength of the young man from the Divine Light Court. Even a martial king realm expert would find it difficult to withstand that punch when he was completely defenseless. But now, Du Xiaofu was unscathed. How powerful was he? He was simply abnormal. As Du Xiaofu stood up again, the smiles on the faces of the people from the Gongsun family suddenly froze. The sneers on the faces of Murong Qijun, Gongsun Bao, and the others also froze. Looking at the unscathed Du Xiaofu, the whole place fell silent. I see. I understand. At this moment, Du Xiaofu did not care about anyone's gaze at all. He kept muttering to himself with a slight smile on his face, looking extremely excited. You're quite capable. I didn't expect you to survive, Gu Yu said in a deep voice, his face extremely gloomy. He did not expect Du Xiaofu to be completely fine after withstanding his divine thunderstorm. You want to kill me? I'm afraid it's not enough. Du Xiaofu raised his head. Only now did he regain his senses. He did not use his full strength just now, and was just accompanying Gu Yu in the fight. During the fight, Du Xiaofu's only goal was to let Gu Yu use the divine thunderstorm. He wanted to see the reason why he could not truly cultivate the divine thunderstorm. When Gu Yu used the divine thunderstorm, Du Xiaofu also fell into deep thought. After paying the price, he finally understood why he could not activate the true power of the divine thunderstorm even though he had successfully cultivated it. The key reason was that he had not noticed it before. Gu Yu's attack just now clearly showed that he wanted to kill Du Xiaofu. This caused an indifferent and cold smile to appear on Du Xiaofu's face as a faint glow flickered deep within his eyes. Seemingly sensing the change in Du Xiaofu's expression, Gu Yu's gloomy gaze slightly twitched without leaving a trace. At the same time, the profound qi in his body surged. Along with the flickering of lightning, waves of rune energy turned into a lightning hammer. Lightning hammer! A loud shout was emitted from Gu Yu's mouth. After which, his body seemed to have turned into lightning and turned into nothingness. One could only see a large amount of lightning directly rushing towards Du Xiaofu. Wherever the terrifying lightning hammer passed, even space seemed to be torn apart, faintly revealing black spatial cracks. Rumble! The lightning hammer fell towards Du Xiaofu. It was like the hammer of the thunder god. The terrifying hammer instantly appeared before Du Xiaofu. The lightning hammer was as fast as lightning. However, just as it was about to land on Du Xiaofu's body, Du Xiaofu's hand seals rapidly formed. Chi la la. At the same time, as Du Xiaofu's hand seals formed, it seemed to have touched something in his body, causing some mysterious light to suddenly blossom from Du Xiaofu's body. The mysterious light seemed a little turbid, and the light was also a little dim. However, it was tightly connected to his meridians and blood vessels. There was also a faintly discernible ancient might that spread out. At this moment, under the guidance of Du Xiaofu's hand seals, the mysterious light faintly started to seep out from his body. In the end, it successfully condensed into a fist seal. Rumble! At this moment, the sky above the square that was surging with wind and clouds seemed to be about to be overturned. Dark clouds gathered, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. An astonishing pressure descended, causing the hearts of countless people in the surroundings to ripple and tremble. Chi la la! The fist was wrapped in lightning. It was the divine thunderstorm that Gu Yu had just condensed. However, under Du Xiaofu's control, its power was many times stronger than before. Divine Thunderstorm. How does that kid know the Divine Thunderstorm of the Divine Light Court? Many people in the Gongsun family looked at the Divine Thunderstorm that Du Xiaofu had created with puzzlement and surprise. Those people were experts of the Divine Light Court. They knew very well that there were many martial arts techniques in the Divine Light Court. Even if they were to be spread out, not many people could cultivate the power that they should have. They had to complement the techniques of the Divine Light Court to cultivate. There were even some disciples of the Divine Light Court who did not have talent in this area, and thus could not successfully cultivate those martial arts techniques. Have a taste of my Divine Thunderstorm! Du Xiaofu indifferently spat out a loud and domineering shout. After which, his fist heavily smashed against the lightning hammer that the former had condensed. Rumble! When the two collided, lightning exploded in a dazzling manner. The rumbling sound of thunder resounded in the square. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the lightning hammer that Gu Yu had condensed cracked under Du Xiaofu's punch. Then, it turned into countless silver bolts of lightning. The runes shattered, dazzling and dazzling. Finally, it turned into nothingness in the sky above the square. The Divine Thunderstorm did not stop and disappear. After destroying Gu Yu's lightning hammer, it destroyed Gu Yu's defense like a hot knife through butter. Bang! Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered with coldness. Then, he directly punched Gu Yu's chest. There was no turning back. It was incomparably domineering and suppressed everything. Bang bang! With a dull thud, Gu Yu's body was sent flying. Blood spurted out of his mouth. In the end, Gu Yu's body was like a bird with broken wings. He directly smashed into the ground dozens of feet away. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Gravel shot out, and cracks appeared on the ground around his body. All of this happened in an extremely short period of time. Under the eyes of the crowd, the lightning hammer that Gu Yu had used at the end was much more powerful than the previous punch. There was no doubt that this was his true full strength. However, the punch that was able to send Du Xiaofu flying earlier was now being destroyed by the other party as easily as crushing dry weeds. This could only prove one thing. The purple-robed youth did not use his full strength in the previous exchange. Many people guessed correctly. Du Xiaofu did not use his full strength in the beginning. Thinking back to when he had just broken through to the martial marquis realm, Du Xiaofu felt that he could destroy an ordinary martial king realm expert with one punch. Chapter 589. In the martial lord realm, he had fought with the mysterious Dragon King, who was at the peak of the Beast King realm, in the long river of Zhong province. Both of them were injured in the end. The mysterious Dragon King was so strong that even the peak of the martial king realm would have to retreat. Du Xiaofu had broken through to the peak of the martial lord realm not long ago, and his strength had improved greatly again. Gu Yu had the spiritual pulse body, which was almost equal to the talent of a human king, and he was already at the peak of the martial king realm. However, when compared to Du Xiaofu, he was still a little lacking. Before Du Xiaofu broke through to the peak of the martial lord realm, Gu Yu might still be able to fight with Du Xiaofu. However, Du Xiaofu had broken through to the peak of the martial king realm, and Gu Yu was no match for him. Walala! The energy waves in the surroundings slowly dissipated, and the entire place was silent. Oh no! Everyone from the Gongsun family turned pale. If Gu Yu lost, the entire Gongsun family would lose as well. Du Xiaofu stood proudly and looked at Gu Yu, who had just fallen to the ground and was covered in blood. His eyes were cold as he said slowly, "I've said it before. The result will be the same even if we fight again. You're just asking for a beating. If you lose, the Gongsun family will be mine in the future." An indifferent and cold voice rang out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. He looked at Gu Yu, who was already struggling to stand up, and did not have any intention of attacking. With a sweep of his long sleeve, he turned around and prepared to leave. Gu Yu's mouth was covered in blood. He was in a sorry state, and his face was pale. Looking at Du Xiaofu's back as he left, Gu Yu's face became unusually ferocious. Lightning flashed in his eyes, and he looked extremely terrifying. A terrifying aura was awakening and blooming. Then, rays of mysterious light climbed around his body. In a short moment, the Gongsun family members on the high platform saw Guyu's change, and they were all shocked. Is he still going to risk his life? They naturally knew that at this moment, Guyu was already prepared to use his killing move. This was Guyu's true trump card, and also the frightening aspect of the spiritual pulse body. And now, that young man by the name of Du Xiaofu had already pushed Guyu to such an extent. In a short instant, Guyu's aura skyrocketed, and he seemed to be even stronger than when he was at his peak. Guyu's entire body was glowing with light. Lightning flickered, and there was a faint blood glow flickering in his eyes. Everything seemed to be related to his martial vein. His face was ferocious as he clenched his hand, and a thunderbolt that was overflowing with lightning was formed. The spiritual veins have changed. Die, brat! A low and deep shout rang out as a cold smile appeared on his ferocious face. In that instant, Guyu's figure shot out like a bolt of lightning. Accompanied by the terrifying thunderbolt in his hand, he instantly appeared behind Du Xiaofu with a terrifying speed that exceeded everyone's imagination. The terrifying lightning struck the back of Du Xiaofu's head. The terrifying power spread out, sending chills down the spines of the spectators nearby. Chi! However, at this moment, it was as if Du Xiaofu had eyes on his back. He quickly twisted his body in an unbelievable direction, and the terrifying thunderbolt brushed past his shoulder. He just happened to avoid the terrifying thunderbolt. At the same time, Du Xiaofu turned around. A chilling aura fluctuated in his eyes, but at this moment, there was also a faint lightning glow in his eyes. In that instant, Guyu suddenly looked at Du Xiaofu's chilling gaze. The skin on his body suddenly tightened, and his hair stood on end. A feeling of fear involuntarily spread out from the depths of his heart. Rumble. His thunderbolt missed, causing his heart to tremble for no reason. However, Guyu did not stay idle. The thunderbolt attack that he had condensed in his hand immediately revolved, intending to continue to envelop and kill Du Xiaofu. However, at this moment, just as Guyu rapidly changed his movements, Du Xiaofu was one step ahead of him. His hand formed a strange seal that overflowed with lightning. An ancient and domineering aura fluctuated from Du Xiaofu's body. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the air as if a storm was about to descend, causing the entire fertile field city to darken. Since you want to kill me, I can only destroy you first. In that instant, Du Xiaofu sneered. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint arc of killing intent, revealing a hint of malevolence. At this moment, when this expression fell into Guyu's eyes, he felt as if he was the Grim Reaper. In that short instant, although it seemed long, in reality, it was only a short moment. Du Xiaofu's hand formed a seal, and amidst the lightning and thunder, a finger seal was formed. Lightning Destruction Finger. A finger imprint shot out. As lightning flashed and thunder roared, Du Xiaofu's index and middle fingers came together. Lightning shot out from the tip of his finger and touched the mysterious light web that was emitting an ancient aura that had yet to dissipate. Under the trembling of Guyu's terrified eyes, a finger imprint directly landed in between Guyu's brows. Swoosh swoosh. Before the finger seal, it pierced through his defense like a thunderbolt, destroying Guyu's extremely weak defense. It pierced through between his eyebrows, and then penetrated a bloody hole at the back of his head. The pupils in Guyu's eyes froze in fear. After which, everything came to a standstill as his body fell stiffly backwards onto the arena. When he landed, there was no sound, as if everything had calmed down. Around the square, on the high platform, countless eyes trembled. Many people trembled, and a chill spread out from their bones. He's dead! That young man with extraordinary talent from the Divine Light Court has been killed! Heavens, that purple-robed young man killed that extraordinary disciple of the Divine Light Court! After a short moment of shock, there were sounds of people sucking in cold air all around the square. No one would have thought that the extraordinary young man of the Divine Light Court would be killed on the spot by the purple-robed young man. Murong Hanlin, Murong Hankin, and the other experts of the Murong family, as well as the people of the Wu family not far away, looked at each other after recovering from their shock, and their expressions changed. But at this moment, the people of the Gongsun family were the ones who looked the most embarrassed. Gongsun Bao's mouth was so shocked that an egg could be stuffed into it. He had never thought that Guyu, who was valued by so many elders of the Divine Light Court, would be killed by the purple-robed young man. Whoosh! After a short moment of shock, a burly man who looked to be in his 50s rushed out from the Gongsun family's lineup and hurried to where Guyu's body had fallen. The burly man's expression was extremely solemn. He squatted down and checked something on Guyu's body. Then, he stood up and looked at the old man who had been sitting beside Gongsun Changkong on the high platform with a gloomy and embarrassed expression. He shook his head slightly. At this moment, the old man's expression suddenly became gloomy, and coldness spread from his eyes. The middle-aged man looked at the old man's eyes and understood what he meant. He suddenly looked at Du Xiaofu and said in a deep voice, "You're Du Xiaofu, and you're from the dark forests, right? Your cultivation journey will stop here in this lifetime." The middle-aged man's expression was gloomy, and killing intent surged in his eyes as he finished speaking. This kid called Du Xiaofu had actually killed Guyu. Putting aside the fact that they would probably be severely punished by the Divine Court when they returned, Du Xiaofu had killed Guyu. Moreover, this kid had mercilessly killed Guyu, which was the most serious provocation to the Divine Light Court. If they didn't get rid of this kid, the Divine Light Court's reputation would be greatly tarnished, and they wouldn't be able to explain themselves when they returned. The burly man in front of Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He wasn't afraid of the burly man in front of him, but he was wary of the experts on the high platform at this moment. There were probably many experts from the Divine Light Court. From the aura in the dark, Du Xiaofu even suspected that there were martial emperors from the Divine Light Court in Fertile Fields City. This was what Du Xiaofu feared the most. However, fear was one thing. When Guyu wanted to kill him just now, Du Xiaofu didn't hesitate at all and directly struck first to gain the upper hand. A person who wanted to kill him was his greatest threat no matter where he was. The best way was to kill him on the spot. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future. Du Xiaofu also thought of the possible consequences of killing Guyu, but he didn't regret it at this time. Watching the burly man in front of him, Du Xiaofu looked straight at him and said indifferently, "He wanted to kill me, but I killed him instead. It's just retribution. Kid, you're challenging the dignity of the Divine Light Court." The burly man was furious, and the killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Is the Divine Light Court used to being domineering? When young people fight, the rule is that they are responsible for their own life and death. A low voice came from the Murong family's lineup. Murong Hanlin stood up, and there was a frightening light fluctuation in his eyes. He then looked at the burly man in the square and said, "What's more, someone from the Divine Light Court secretly launched a sneak attack after he was defeated and wanted to kill him. Now that he was killed, he only has himself to blame. Since the Divine Light Court is such a bully, the Murong family can only fight." Murong Hanlin's voice reverberated through the square, and for a moment, whispers came from all around. TSK, Murong Hanlin, this is a matter between the Divine Light Court and that kid. It has nothing to do with you. That kid clearly wanted to kill at the end, so the Divine Light Court naturally has to deal with him. You'd better step down." Gongsun Changkong stood up and shouted. He naturally hoped that the Divine Light Court would directly kill that kid called Du Xiaofu at this time. Otherwise, the Gongsun family would be in an awkward and terrible position. Since the younger generation of your two families have invited us to be the witnesses, I'll also say something. Chapter 590. On the high platform, an old man in Confucian robes stood up and looked at Gongsun Changkong and Murong Hanlin. "It's the head of the Wu family. He's going to declare his position." When the surrounding people heard this, their gazes immediately turned towards the old man in scholarly robes. It was unlikely that anyone in Fertile Field City would not recognize the old man in Confucian robes. He was the head of the Wu family, one of the three great families of Fertile Field City, Wu Tianyong. He was the only person in Fertile Field City who could stand on equal footing with Gong Sun Changkong and Murong Hanlin. Wu Tianyong looked at Du Xiaofu on the square, then looked at Gong Sun Changkong and Murong Hanlin. According to the rules, the Murong family and the Gong Sun family are both responsible for their own lives in this battle. The participation of Du Xiaofu and the Divine Light Court is also related to the Murong family and the Gong Sun family. The rules should be the same. Moreover, it was the people of the Divine Light Court who launched a sneak attack first. If someone interferes in this matter now, then as the witness, I naturally have to uphold justice. Murong Hanlin did not seem to be surprised by Wu Tianyong's words. The Gong Sun family and the Divine Light Court were already on the same side. The next to be dealt with would naturally be the Murong family, and then the Wu family. Murong Hanlin knew that Wu Tianyong was not a fool. He had always been as shrewd as a fox. He naturally understood the relationship between the two parties. At this time, he would naturally not let the people of the Divine Light Court deal with Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu had defeated the young man of the Divine Light Court. According to the rules, he had already defeated the entire Gong Sun family. Regardless of whether Du Xiaofu could really subdue the Gong Sun family in the end, it was certain that Du Xiaofu's appearance was enough to cause a change in the relationship between the Gong Sun family and the Divine Light Court. This was most likely what Wu Tianyong wanted. Wu Tianyong's words immediately made Gong Sun Changkong's face turn somewhat ugly. Naturally, he was not afraid of Murong Hanlin and the Murong family. However, if Wu Tianyong was added, then everything would be different. Therefore, Gong Sun Changkong could only look at the old man sitting next to him, intentionally or unintentionally. That old man was about the same age as Gong Sun Changkong, but he was respected by Gong Sun Changkong. At this time, Wu Tianyong's words were naturally heard by the old man of the Divine Light Court. His gloomy and cold eyes moved slightly as he looked directly at Wu Tianyong and Murong Hanlin, saying, "You must be Wu Tianyong of the Wu family and Murong Hanlin of the Murong family. Who said that the Divine Light Court is dealing with that kid because of a contest?" The gloomy old man paused for a moment, then clenched his teeth and said with an incomparably gloomy expression, "Life and death in a battle is one's own responsibility. When has the Divine Light Court ever bullied others? It's just that Du Xiaofu is not a member of the Divine Light Court, but he has cultivated the important martial techniques of the Divine Light Court, Divine Light Thunderstorm and Lightning Destruction Finger. Could it be that the Murong family and the Wu family also want to interfere when the Divine Light Court investigates the martial techniques? Don't blame me for being blunt. This is a matter between the Divine Light Court and that kid. If anyone dares to interfere, the Divine Light Court will not be polite." As the gloomy words fell, Murong Hanlin and Wu Tianyong's expressions changed slightly. Everyone could tell that the old man of the Divine Light Court was making an excuse. But if the Divine Light Court was really so determined, then it would really be difficult to interfere. Once they did, they would really be provoking the Divine Light Court. At that time, even if it was for the dignity of the Divine Light Court, the Divine Light Court would absolutely not let it go. Given the strength of the Divine Light Court, even if the Murong family and the Wu family joined forces, they would not be able to contend at all. They would be easily razed to the ground by the Divine Light Court. Murong Hanlin's gaze trembled slightly, secretly fluctuating. On the high platform, he looked at Du Xiaofu in the square and asked, "Little brother Du Xiaofu, is what the Divine Light Court said true? You have cultivated the martial techniques of the Divine Light Court, or is it a coincidence?" Murong Hanlin's words were somewhat obscure. While he was asking Du Xiaofu whether he had cultivated the martial techniques of the Divine Light Court, he was also undoubtedly telling Du Xiaofu that even if he had cultivated the martial techniques of the Divine Light Court, it was best not to admit it even if he was beaten to death. Even if it was a coincidence, at least when the time came, he and Wu Tianyong would be able to find an excuse to intervene. Otherwise, it would really be difficult for him and Wu Tianyong to intervene. "I have cultivated the martial techniques of the Divine Light Court." Du Xiaofu did not deny it. It was not that Du Xiaofu did not understand Murong Hanlin's words, but hiding and not daring to admit what he had done were not in Du Xiaofu's character. Anyway, the Divine Light Court would most likely eat a stone and be determined to deal with him. How could they give up so easily just because of the intervention of the Murong family and the Wu family? You have nothing to say, right? This is a matter between the Divine Light Court and that kid. If you dare to intervene, I guarantee that I will raze Fertile City and your two families to the ground. On the high platform, the elder of the Divine Light Court looked coldly at Murong Hanlin and Wu Tianyong. Then, he looked at the burly man in the square and nodded slightly. At this moment, Murong Hanlin and Wu Tianyong's eyes were secretly dignified. They naturally did not doubt the words of the elder of the Divine Light Court. If the Divine Light Court wanted to raze Fertile City to the ground, it would definitely not be too difficult to raze the Murong family and the Wu family to the ground. Kiki. Gongsun Chongkong saw that Murong Hanlin and Wu Tianyong were both speechless and did not dare to make a move. He immediately sneered. That kid called Du Xiaofu had killed Guyu. How could the Divine Light Court let him go so easily? As long as that kid was dead, the bet would naturally not count. At that time, the Gongsun family would still be the Gongsun family. Kid, you have secretly cultivated the martial techniques of the Divine Light Court. Surrender without a fight, or do you want me to make a move? On the square, the burly man heard the elder's words and also understood the elder's intention. In order to prevent people from gossiping, he was afraid that he could only capture this kid and bring him back to the Divine Light Court. If he resisted, he would be able to kill him openly. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at the burly man in front of him. A faint chill flashed across his eyes as he said, I cultivated the martial techniques myself. It has nothing to do with the Divine Light Court. No matter how eloquent you are, it's useless. Looks like you don't plan to surrender without a fight. The burly man looked coldly at Du Xiaofu and said in a cold voice. Mysterious chi began to surge around his body as lightning shuttled back and forth on the surface of his body. A shocking aura spread out in an extremely short period of time. He had reached the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm. Divine Light Court, don't go too far. If you anger me, I'm afraid you will regret it, Du Xiaofu said in a deep voice. Although he was afraid at the moment, and his expression was slightly serious, he was not the kind of person who would be trampled on by others. You're courting death. The burly man no longer talked nonsense. His eyes were filled with coldness as the terrifying aura of the Martial King realm of the Nirvana realm erupted. It shook the space like a tornado, accompanied by lightning and thunder. The mighty aura made people tremble. His figure was like lightning. A fist print blasted out like a falling meteorite and directly bombarded Du Xiaofu's face. As the burly man of the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm made his move, Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanken, and the others were also shocked. They did not know if Du Xiaofu could withstand it. The burly man was a Nirvana realm expert of the Martial King realm. Idiot, be careful! Murong Xiang was so anxious that her delicate body trembled. Her delicate hands clenched tightly into fists, but she could not intervene at all. Back then, Du Xiaofu dared to confront the mysterious Dragon King who was at the peak of the Nirvana realm of the Beast King realm. Now, he had nothing to fear from a Martial King realm cultivator of the Divine Light Court who had not reached the peak of the Nirvana realm. You're not enough! Du Xiaofu let out a loud shout. An overbearing and ferocious aura suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's body, causing the space to tremble. All of a sudden, golden talisman runes flickered on his skin. In an instant, his hand violently swept out. Sky-shaking wings! His hand was like a palm leaf fan. Dense layers of pale golden talisman patterns flickered and condensed. It was like the golden wings of a golden-winged rock. Golden light burst out and illuminated the sky. It directly slapped on the lightning fist of the burly man of the Martial King realm of the Nirvana realm. Rumble! With such a collision, lightning raged and golden talisman patterns shot out. Terrifying airwaves surged into the sky. A large area of space was directly swept out with vacuum marks. The ground of the square exploded, and the scene was horrifying. Thud thud. As the energy swept out, Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in a pale golden halo as he took 3 steps back. As he retreated step by step, the ground under his feet turned into fine powder. Tsk tisk! As for the burly man of the martial king realm of the Nirvana realm, his feet directly brushed against the ground of the square as he retreated. Layers of stone slabs were overturned and gravel shot out. He only stabilized his body after a few feet. His face was filled with shock as he secretly clenched his fist. His fist was numb at that moment. Gosh, he even has the upper hand! That Du Xiaofu is too terrifying! The surrounding people were shocked at that moment. Du Xiaofu was still able to contend against a martial king realm expert of the Nirvana realm. Judging from his age, his talent was terrifying, and his future was limitless. On the high platform, the old man of the Divine Light Court looked gloomy and embarrassed. His cold voice was heard. That kid is not simple. Capture that kid together, regardless of life or death. Yes. Several figures nodded in response. Then, several figures instantly leaped down from the high platform. Several martial king auras burst out at the same time. Rumble! In just a short moment, the sky above the entire fertile field city was also trembling. High in the sky, the clouds surged, and lightning flashed. The sky in the distance was dark. Whoosh whoosh! 5 figures instantly landed on the square. They all landed near Du Xiaofu and surrounded Du Xiaofu. Chapter 591. 5 martial king realm auras directly crushed Du Xiaofu's body. Just the pressure of this terrifying aura alone was enough to make those who were weaker fall to the ground. Father, help that idiot! Murong Xiang'er stood up and looked pleadingly at Murong Hanlin. She was not strong enough, but she could feel it from afar. At this time, there were 5 martial king realm experts. No matter how strong Du Xiaofu was, he would not be able to resist. Only her father could help. Murong Hanlin's eyes moved. He looked at Murong Xiang'er, whose face was pale with worry, and then looked at the elder of the Divine Light Court. He gritted his teeth and said angrily, "The Divine Light Court has so many people to deal with a junior. Isn't it too degrading for the Divine Light Court? If this spreads out, the Divine Light Court will lose face." Humph, Murong Hanlin, how can that brat's strength be compared to a junior's? If you want to intervene, how about I play with you first? If you don't fear that the Divine Light Court will raze your Murong family to the ground and leave no one alive, then you can intervene as much as you want. Before the elder of the Divine Light Court could reply, Gongsun Changkong directly looked at Murong Hanlin and said. The threat in his words was not concealed. Murong Hanlin's face was pale. He naturally understood the situation. At this time, even if the entire Murong family helped, the Gongsun family would also interfere. The Wu family might not really help. Moreover, there was also the elder of the Divine Light Court, whose aura made him afraid. Therefore, even if he intervened, the result would not change much. Seeing that Murong Hanlin did not dare to move, Gongsun Changkong sneered again. Master Murong, this has nothing to do with the Murong family. You don't have to interfere. My life is not so easy to take. A faint voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. He had been watching the conversation and the situation on the high platform. Du Xiaofu knew what was going on. At the same time, his eyes slowly swept across the 5 martial king realm cultivators of the Divine Light Court who had just joined. At this time, the 5 martial king realm cultivators did not hide their aura at all. Du Xiaofu could easily feel that among the 5 martial king realm cultivators, a 50-year-old man in yellow had already reached the martial king realm. The remaining 4 were also at the mysterious martial king realm, and the last one was at the Nirvana realm. Since you want to kill me, then be prepared to pay the price. Du Xiaofu spat a mouthful of saliva on the square and looked around. The faint golden xianqi in his body surged, and a chill fluctuated in his eyes. A faint golden light surged like a ferocious beast. Suppress capture! Once again, the 5 martial king realm experts landed on the square. The leading martial king realm expert in his 50s bellowed and took the lead to attack. Boom! The surrounding air trembled. The 50-year-old man attacked Du Xiaofu. He was an expert of the Divine Light Court. Although he looked like he was 50 years old, he had actually cultivated for no less than 70 years. When he was young, he was also an expert of the younger generation in the Divine Light Court. Now that he was at the Martial King realm, the old man did not believe that he could not suppress Du Xiaofu. A palm print condensed. The 50-year-old man slapped out. Thunder and lightning covered the sky, and directly pressed down on Du Xiaofu. However, the old man underestimated Du Xiaofu's strength. He also underestimated Du Xiaofu. In addition to his strength, his speed was also extremely terrifying. Just as the palm print was about to descend from all directions, Du Xiaofu's figure had already drifted like a god, disappearing from his original spot in an unpredictable manner. Swish! When Du Xiaofu's figure appeared again, he was already not far away from the Martial Marquis Realm cultivator on the left. His eyes flickered with a faint golden light, and a domineering and terrifying aura spread out. Humph, you're courting death! The Martial King Realm cultivator was already prepared. He was wary that Du Xiaofu might run away, and that he would choose to flee in the direction where the three of them were relatively weaker. Therefore, he was already waiting with all his strength. The Martial King Realm cultivator condensed a palm print. The runes were bright, and a dazzling thunder and lightning swept out. Electric snakes flickered, and a dazzling light burst out. Accompanied by a rumbling sound, it directly bombarded Du Xiaofu. Roar! Just as the man attacked, Du Xiaofu roared out. It was like a dragon roaring in the ninth heaven, like a divine elephant trumpeting. His aura looked down on all things. Boom! In a short moment, dazzling golden runes bloomed around Du Xiaofu's body. With the sound of wind and thunder like the sound of Sanskrit, they condensed into a fist print. Accompanied by an imperceptible trajectory and rune fluctuation, it finally collided with the man's attack like meteorites colliding. Bang bang! In front of the domineering fist print, the terrifying golden energy was incomparably domineering. It was like a shock wave in the void, and it directly resisted the thunder and lightning attack of the Martial King Realm cultivator. Then, the thunder and lightning attack trembled, and finally cracked and exploded. The fist print was indestructible and domineering, suppressing all living things. The majestic golden light almost drowned the man. Bang! Then, the fist print directly hit the chest of the Martial King Realm cultivator, and his body was sent flying. His sternum collapsed, and he suffered an irreversible injury. The bones around his chest, along with his internal organs, had all been shattered. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's awed attack was executed with a mysterious move with the intent to kill. How could it be blocked by a Martial King Realm mystery-level cultivator? Puff puff puff! The Martial King Realm cultivator spat out blood. His face was pale, and his eyes were forever frozen in shock. His body was sent flying far away. Boom! His body fell to the ground, and the ground of the square cracked. The gravel rumbled and swept up into the sky. His body did not get up again. He was dead. Everyone was shocked. The purple-robed young man was too strong. He killed a Martial King Realm cultivator with just one move. The purple-robed young man was decisive and domineering. He was able to take the opportunity to kill the enemy while being besieged. His rich combat experience was enough to make people tremble in fear. Bastard, die! In an instant, the old man who was in his 50s, who was at the peak of the Martial King Realm, shouted coldly. He had witnessed his fellow disciple being killed right in front of his eyes. How could he not be furious? His eyes were cold as he charged towards Du Xiaofu again. His whole body was covered in thunder and lightning. Thunder roared in the sky. Sizzle! The vast attack behind him swept over. Du Xiaofu's eyes darkened. In a short moment, a domineering and terrifying aura erupted like a flash flood. In an instant, the golden light around Du Xiaofu's body soared into the sky like a rising sun. The golden light flickered, and a pair of talisman inscriptions that glittered with golden light suddenly stretched out. Buzz! At the same time, the golden talisman wings flapped, and Du Xiaofu's body shot up into the sky. His speed skyrocketed, and in an instant, he broke away from the Martial King Realm cultivator's suppression. The wings flapped, and the flowing light overflowed and filled the sky. Du Xiaofu's figure did not escape forward. Instead, he turned around in an instant. The wings flapped, and golden light bloomed all over the sky. The airflow whistled in the sky, and the momentum was terrifying. It was like a rock flapping its wings and soaring to the 9 heavens. Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly appeared beside the second martial king realm cultivator unexpectedly. "Rock descends to the 9 heavens, destroy!" The shout resounded through the sky like wind and thunder. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was like a real golden-winged rock descending, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. He flapped his wings, and a domineering and terrifying aura filled the sky. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Du Xiaofu's all-suppressing aura landed on the body of the second martial king realm arcane level cultivator, who was unable to react in time, and shattered it into a bloody mist that filled the sky. Rumble! The earth quaked, the mountains shook, and the space trembled. At this moment, the purple-robed young man was the only one in the world. He suppressed everything, causing the square to rumble and the space to tremble. How fierce was he to suppress a martial king realm cultivator to death? Flapping his wings, Du Xiaofu did not stop at all. His ethereal and unpredictable figure quickly appeared in front of the third martial king of the Divine Light Court in the mysterious martial king realm. "Oh no, run!" Seeing 2 cultivators of the same level being killed, the third martial king realm cultivator did not dare to fight back. He quickly retreated and fled, not daring to fight back at all. Boom! Suddenly, the sky trembled, and the energy of heaven and earth quietly surged and gathered toward Du Xiaofu. A ray of greenish-golden light burst out from Du Xiaofu's hand. The greenish-golden light faded, and a greenish-golden long sword appeared. The sword's arc was elegant, and the greenish-golden light shone brightly. It was completely natural, and a domineering and fierce aura filled the air, making clanging sounds. Kill! Facing the fleeing martial king realm cultivator, Du Xiaofu flapped his wings and chased after him while slashing out with his sword. Buzz! It was a simple slash, but the sword radiance swept out. The sound of wind and thunder resounded, and the greenish-golden brilliance shone brightly. At this moment, it seemed to contain the power to move mountains and seas. It was enough to shake mountains and rivers, crack mountains and crack the earth, and destroy everything. The sword radiance instantly spread to the back of the fleeing martial king realm cultivator with the speed of lightning, and landed on his defensive chi halo. Chi 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 chi. Wherever the sword radiance passed, a long crack appeared on the ground of the square. It was as if an earthquake had broken the earth, and it was terrifying. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the profound martial king realm expert's profound chi defense was easily shattered. Then, his body was directly split into 2. He was killed on the spot, and his blood spilled over Fertile City. Chapter 592. Bastard, go to hell! Finally, one of the last 5 martial king realm experts, who was at the Nirvana realm, pounced in front of Du Xiaofu in rage. His speed was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning, bringing along a gust of wind. Wherever he passed, the stone slabs and gravel on the square below were all swept away. In his hand, there was a powerful talisman weapon that looked like a saber but not a saber. It looked like a halberd but also like a spear. Chi la la! The talisman weapon swept across, creating a sonorous sound wave. Runes danced in the air, and the surrounding space turned into a vacuum under the energy shockwave of the lightning. In the end, it gathered into a terrifying and sharp attack. The sharp attack was like the light in the vast sea of lightning. The lightning was blazing, and a murderous aura descended, slashing towards Du Xiaofu. Wherever the terrifying attack passed, the ground cracked, and the vacuum waves seemed to tear the space apart. It was extremely frightening. At that moment, the attack of this martial king realm Nirvana realm cultivator shocked the surroundings. The gap between the Nirvana realm martial king realm and the mysterious martial king realm was too big. It was as if they were 2 different worlds. Once one reached the martial emperor realm, it would be difficult for one to surpass the martial emperor realm. At that moment, Countless gazes both inside and outside the high platform in the square froze and watched closely. At that moment, when the terrifying and sharp attack instantly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, suddenly, a mysterious aura spread out from Du Xiaofu's body. Du Xiaofu's eyes, which were originally filled with golden light, were now filled with strange talisman patterns. An extremely shocking energy swept out, shaking one's soul. Mysterious soul eye! At that moment, within Du Xiaofu's eyes, it was as if there were tens of thousands of rays of light shooting out. The strange mysterious patterns of the talisman overlapped with each other. Finally, like a ray of light, it shrouded the entire sky and enveloped the former. And at that moment, the former martial king at the Nirvana realm, whose eyes were filled with killing intent, suddenly became sluggish as if they were frozen. The attack that was activated by the talisman weapon in his hand also stopped and dissipated. The golden rune wings flapped, and Du Xiaofu appeared in front of the latter. He slashed down with his sword, and the sword light tore through the air as fast as lightning. At that moment, the Nirvana realm martial king who was in a daze just now immediately came back to his senses. "You are also a talisman master, a 6-star talisman master!" However, it was too late. The pupils of the martial king realm expert from the divine light court constricted as shock and fear gushed out from his eyes. The sword radiance streaked across the space in a domineering manner, and directly struck his body. It fell from his shoulder and split him into two. In the end, he turned into a bloody mist and shattered in the sky. Walala! Another martial king at the Nirvana realm was killed by Du Xiaofu. His blood splattered on the spot. Boom! The delay this time allowed the martial king realm expert in his 50s to finally catch up to Du Xiaofu in a rage. Blazing lightning runes gushed out from his body, and a terrifying palm pressed down furiously. The palm print was forcefully repelled before, and in the delay at this moment, Du Xiaofu could not avoid it. The former's palm print immediately slammed onto Du Xiaofu's back. Boom! As the terrifying palm fell, Du Xiaofu's body suddenly rushed forward. The aura of lightning swept across, and there was no way for him to avoid it. The vast and mighty lightning bombarded and invaded his body. Pfft! Under the huge impact, Du Xiaofu's internal organs also trembled. His qi and blood surged, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of light golden blood. With the strength of Du Xiaofu's body, and the body that had recently undergone bone cutting and marrow cleansing, ordinary people could not hurt Du Xiaofu's body at all. However, at this time, under the attack of the martial king realm expert, Du Xiaofu was also injured. However, it was definitely not an easy thing to completely injure Du Xiaofu's body at this time. At this time, no one knew that the lightning attack of the martial king realm expert that poured into Du Xiaofu's body, after entering Du Xiaofu's body, although it made Du Xiaofu spit out blood, it inexplicably fell silent in Du Xiaofu's body, as if it was automatically absorbed by some energy dormant in Du Xiaofu's body. "Kid, go to hell!" Just as Du Xiaofu's body staggered and flew forward, the martial king realm Nirvana realm expert that was the first to be slapped away by Du Xiaofu appeared. The expert was already prepared. He took the opportunity to pounce out from Du Xiaofu's side. His killing move was swift and fierce. A fist print was like a thunderbolt, and with the momentum of a thunderbolt, it ruthlessly hit Du Xiaofu's back. Boom! On Du Xiaofu's back, there was another dull sound. Waves of vast and mighty power swept out heavily, causing the space around Du Xiaofu to tremble violently. It was extremely terrifying. However, just as the terrifying fist of the martial king realm expert just landed on Du Xiaofu's body, a sharp murderous intent and chilling aura in Du Xiaofu's eyes became even more blazing. Du Xiaofu's combat power was already nature-defying, and his defense was even more insane. Just as the fist of the expert landed, Du Xiaofu suddenly turned around and stabbed out with his right hand, dominating shadow. The sword gleam instantly shot out. Retreat! The expert's expression changed in panic. He had already taken precautions before this, so his body instantly retreated and retreated in an instant. The martial king realm expert's Nirvana realm aura burst out and actually dodged Du Xiaofu's sword by a hair's breadth. As he escaped from danger, he could not help but reveal a cold smile. Dominating shadow change! Just as the martial king realm expert thought that he had escaped danger, Du Xiaofu turned around and revealed a cold smile on his face. The azure gold longsword in his hand turned into layers of azure gold sword whips. Chi-la-la. The azure gold sword whips were like a dragon soaring into the sky and a roc soaring in the sky. They swept out fiercely, agile, and bewitching. With the speed of lightning, they directly swept towards the chest of the martial king realm expert. Just as the martial king realm expert did not expect this at all, the azure gold sword whips directly destroyed the chi protective halo around his body, and then directly pierced into the former's chest. Chi! The sword whips swept past and then circled around, hooking a large piece of shattered internal organs and flesh, causing blood to drip. In an instant, a large piece of blood mist sprayed into the air from the body of the divine light quartz expert. Blood also spurted out from the corner of his mouth. Chi-la-la! The azure gold long whip was bewitching. In the end, it circled around and once again turned into a natural, simple, and elegant azure gold longsword in Du Xiaofu's hand. At this moment, the martial king realm expert in his 50s appeared in front of the expert. His eyes were filled with rage, but he also stopped. Avenge for me! As the expert's last words fell, his eyes were filled with unwillingness, resentment, and fear. Then, his eyes shrunk, and blood sprayed into the air. His body fell straight onto the ground of the square like a dead bird with broken wings, and there were no longer any signs of movement. The body of the martial king realm expert in his 50s was suspended in the air. Looking at the corpse that had just fallen, the rage in his eyes began to become more intense. His fists were tightly clenched, and his nails dug into his flesh. The muscles on his face twitched, and began to distort, and become ferocious. Gulp, gulp. At this moment, countless people around the square and on the high platform fiercely sucked in cold air. In a short period of time, everything happened in a short period of time. No one would have thought that there were a total of 6 experts in the martial king realm. Among them, 2 were in the nirvana realm, 3 were in the mystery realm, and 1 was in the martial king realm. Such a powerful lineup was unexpectedly useless in front of Du Xiaofu. They could not even suppress the corner of Du Xiaofu's clothes. Instead, 5 experts of the martial king realm were killed by Du Xiaofu one after another. Throughout the square below, all the onlookers seemed to have suddenly shivered. A chill ran down their spines, and the depths of their souls were also trembling. Their eyes were suddenly filled with shock, and the blood in their bodies began to surge. Du Xiaofu had acted very quickly, and even in one breath, it was extremely coherent. However, the 5 experts of the martial king realm had already been killed on the spot. The purple-robed youth was so powerful and overbearing that no one could remain calm. At this moment, even Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanken, Wu Tianyong, Gong Sun Changkong, and the others on the high platform were all dumbfounded, and could not recover from the shock. They absolutely did not expect all of this. The 5 experts of the martial king realm of the Divine Light Court were killed on the spot in such a short period of time. It was too shocking. On the high platform, the elder of the Divine Light Court suddenly stood up, and then his figure disappeared in an instant. "Kid, today you will die without a doubt." When the elder's figure reappeared, he was already in front of Du Xiaofu, and roared angrily. The elder was about to collapse. 5 martial king realm experts, plus Guyu. He would be in big trouble when he returned this time. How could he let the kid in front of him go? "I will definitely not let you go, including the Divine Light Court," Du Xiaofu shouted. At this moment, his eyes were red with killing, and his blood was boiling. The sword radiance in his hand erupted, and directly slashed at the elder. "You are courting death! You are definitely courting death!" The elder was furious. He did not expect that Du Xiaofu did not take him seriously at all. This was courting death. His chi surged, and the surrounding air trembled. He waved his hand, and a palm print directly pressed down on Du Xiaofu. Endless lightning erupted, and drowned Du Xiaofu, wanting to kill Du Xiaofu directly. Whoosh! This time, under the elder's attack, Du Du Xiaofu's sword radiance was directly destroyed in front of countless shocked eyes. The sky was in a state of chaos, as blazing rays of light resembled the sun. After which, everyone watched as Du Xiaofu's body directly fell from the sky. Even the pair of incomparably overbearing golden rune wings on his body had been shattered. Rumble! Du Xiaofu's body fell to the ground, and the golden rune wings on his back cracked. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and the ground shook and the mountains shook, and gravel shot out. However, his hand was still tightly holding tyrannical shadow. Martial King Realm! That old guy is at the Martial King Realm! Du Xiaofu struggled to get up. Even with the strength of his physical body, he felt like his bones were about to fall apart. Chapter 593. The attack just now was too powerful. Only those at the Martial Emperor Realm could do it. Just as Du Xiaofu had expected, the old man from the Divine Light Court was a Martial Emperor Realm expert. In midair, the old man from the Divine Light Court looked at Du Xiaofu, who had crawled up. His eyes were secretly filled with shock. He did not expect Du Xiaofu to be able to get up. If an ordinary peak Martial King Realm expert had been hit by his attack just now, they would not have been able to get up now. From this, it could be seen that Du Xiaofu's physical body was abnormally strong. Brat, no matter what, you're dead. If I don't kill you, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart, the old man from the Divine Light Court said angrily. In the blink of an eye, 5 Martial King Realm experts had been killed on the spot. Even he was so shocked that he was stunned for a moment. If he had known earlier, he would have taken action earlier. Then, he would not have caused such a huge and terrifying loss. He was filled with regret and became more and more furious. Father! Hearing the words of the old man from the Divine Light Court, Murong Xiang'e was startled. Then, she looked nervously at her father, Murong Hanlin. Murong Hanlin shook his head slightly. At this time, he was clear about the situation. Even if he did not care about the entire Murong family, Gongsun Changkong would be the first to entangle him. Moreover, he had to consider the entire Murong family. Previously, Du Xiaofu had told him not to get involved. At this time, Murong Hanlin could only hope that Du Xiaofu, who had endless tricks up his sleeve, would still have a way to escape at the last moment. Du Xiaofu did not say anything. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the sky. There was a hint of madness in his eyes. At this time, it was difficult to fight against a Martial Emperor Realm expert. Du Xiaofu was anxious. He could only use the purple gold heavenly palace. Even if the consequences were not something he could control and fight against now, it was still better than being killed on the spot. At this time, there was no other way, no other choice. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu put away the tyrannical shadow in his hand, raised his head slightly, and looked coldly at the 2 furious people from the Divine Light Court in the sky. He sneered. My life is right here, come and take it if you have the ability. Humph! Brat, you're about to die, and you're still boasting shamelessly. The elder of the Divine Light Court was enraged. He looked down at Du Xiaofu with a murderous look in his eyes. Then, his body shot out at the same time and swooped down toward Du Xiaofu. In an instant, he was above Du Xiaofu. At this moment, the gaze in Du Xiaofu's eyes became completely crazy. She was about to use the purple gold heavenly palace at all costs. Boom! At the same time, the old man from the Divine Light Court also pounced in front of Du Xiaofu. His mighty aura surged, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled behind him. There was a huge difference between a Martial Dominator Realm expert and a Martial Emperor Realm expert. Swish! At this moment, in the blink of an eye, a figure suddenly appeared in the space in front of Du Xiaofu as if it had torn the space apart. Then, an old figure appeared, and a terrifying pressure suddenly spread across the sky. Under such pressure, not to mention the onlookers in the square, even the experts in Fertile Field City on the high platform turned pale in an instant. Everyone felt an oppressive aura descend, and the chi in their bodies faintly solidified. At this moment, the elder of the Divine Light Court who was pouncing toward Du Xiaofu had a drastic change in expression. His figure suddenly stopped in the middle of his charge, as if he had felt an extremely terrifying aura. A look of horror immediately crept onto his face. "Do you bastards think you can touch my disciple?" At this moment, an old figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, exuding an ancient and domineering aura. His loud voice immediately reverberated in the sky above the square, like a sudden clap of thunder that resounded throughout the entire fertile field city. "Disciple?" Many people's gazes suddenly trembled as they looked at the old figure that had strangely appeared. Du Xiaofu was already so terrifying at such a young age. Now that his master had arrived, what kind of terrifying expert would he be? Just the aura that had spread out at this moment was enough to make people tremble. The elder of the Divine Light Court looked at the old man who had suddenly appeared at this moment, and his eyes trembled. The aura that had spread out from the old man's body made him fearful. That kind of fear was not ordinary fear. "Retreat first!" The elder of the Divine Light Court's expression changed drastically. At this moment, he exchanged glances with the old man who was at the Martial King realm. Both of them immediately released their chi and retreated immediately. At this time, the two of them had never thought that they would provoke Du Xiaofu's master at this time. "Do you think you can escape after bullying my disciple?" However, just as the two people of the Divine Light Court were about to move, and their chi surged as they were about to flee, the old figure sneered. With a shake of his sleeve, he stretched out his rather old palm and directly slapped the two people of the Divine Light Court who were retreating. Slap, slap! Then, under countless dumbfounded gazes, two bright red palm prints appeared on the faces of the two people of the Divine Light Court at the same time. Blood and teeth were spat out from their mouths. Then, the two people suffered a heavy blow and fiercely shot backward from midair. They rushed into the square below like meteorites. Rumble! The earth shook and the mountains shook. The two people fell to the ground fiercely, and two large pits were blasted open on the square's ground. The Martial King realm cultivator was obviously the most miserable. He crawled in the deep pit for a long time but still could not get up. "Oh my God!" Looking at the bloody Martial Royal Realm old man who had just stood up and the Martial King realm expert in perfection who had been struggling for a long time, everyone in the square and the high platform gasped in astonishment. Gongsun Chongkong, Gongsun Bao and the others had cold sweat on their cheeks and backs. Murong Hanlin, Wu Tianyong and the others also looked at each other. They could not resist the strength of the old man at all. He was a terrifying expert who had arrived in Fertile Field City. Gulp, gulp! Everyone in the square swallowed their saliva. They were all dumbfounded and dumbfounded. A Martial Emperor realm expert could not even resist a slap from the old man. How shocking was this? At this moment, Du Xiaofu looked at the old man who had suddenly appeared in front of him. Seeing that the Martial Emperor realm expert of the Divine Light Court could not withstand a single blow, and was sent flying with a slap, the madness in his eyes subsided, but then he clicked his tongue. What kind of terrifying level had the old man reached to be able to send a Martial Emperor realm expert flying with a slap? At this moment, the entire square had become silent because of the sudden appearance of the old man and the slap of the old man. Huff, huff, gulp, gulp! Apart from the sounds of gasps and swallowing of saliva, there were no other sounds. What is Du Xiaofu's background? His master is actually such a strong expert. Murong Hanlin, Murong Hanken, Wu Tianyong, Gongsun Chongkong and the others were all thinking. Who else dares to touch my disciple? After slapping Lun Fei and the two people from the Divine Light Court, the old man stood in midair and did not look at them again. He looked around, and the aura of pressure spread out, making everyone in the surroundings not dare to speak. Most people did not even dare to raise their heads. At this moment, most people could see clearly that the old man who had suddenly appeared was in his 70s. He was floating in midair, and his figure was thin and slender. The old man in his 70s was wearing a green and white robe, and there was an ancient sword on his back. His appearance was very similar to Du Xiaofu, and one could tell at a glance that they were master and disciple. The old man's white hair fluttered in the wind. A few strands of white hair fluttered in the wind along with his white beard. He gave off the impression of an immortal. His temperament was extraordinary, as if an immortal had descended to the world. It was enough to make people respect him. The old man withdrew his gaze from the surroundings and finally fixed it on Du Xiaofu. There was a smile in his eyes, and it was as if he had seen his favorite thing. "Good job, kid, I like it." However, as he spoke at such a close distance, his immortal temperament suddenly disappeared. In particular, 2 front teeth protruded out of his mouth, like rabbit teeth. As he spoke, he spat saliva from time to time, which almost sprayed on Du Xiaofu's face. "Senior!" At this moment, Du Xiaofu finally got a clear look at the appearance of the old man who had suddenly appeared. The disciple of his sect was extremely strong, but he had never seen this old man before. Du Xiaofu was puzzled. At this time, Du Xiaofu naturally did not know the identity of this old man. He was Elder Qingyang, who had been looking for Du Xiaofu everywhere in the ancient heaven sect. Elder Qingyang had been searching for a long time, and he was on the verge of giving up. Who would have thought that when he happened to pass by Fertile Field City today, he would see a sea of people here? He wanted to see what was going on, but instead, he found what he was looking for. Elder Qingyang had arrived at the square early, but he also wanted to take the opportunity to see Du Xiaofu's cultivation strength. Therefore, he had been holding back and did not show his face. Therefore, he was shocked again and again. It was as if he had found a treasure, and the more he looked at it, the more he liked it. In the end, the martial Emperor Realm cultivator of the Divine Light Court made a move. Fearing that Du Xiaofu would be injured, Elder Qingyang had no choice but to step forward. How could he let someone who dared to hurt the disciple he had already decided on? "Let's talk later. Take the elixir quickly, don't let it affect your injuries." Just as Du Xiaofu opened his mouth, Elder Qingyang interrupted Du Xiaofu. Then, he directly took out a large number of elixirs from his Qianquan bag and stuffed them into Du Xiaofu's hand. Above the elixirs, a multicolored light filled the air, and a strong medicinal fragrance wafted in all directions. "Brothers, 7 times in a row until now. Shall you go to sleep for a while? 7 updates in a row. Brothers, if you're happy with it, I'll send you flowers, recommendations, and so on to express my gratitude." Chapter 594. Marquis Grade Elixirs and a King Grade Elixir. Du Xiaofu was instantly stunned, as he never imagined that this old man with a sage-like demeanor would be so generous. A handful of Marquis-grade medicinal pills and a single King-grade medicinal pill were extraordinarily valuable and expensive. Even the eyes of some experts on the high platform lit up with envy when they saw the elixirs from afar. "These are all elixirs for healing. Take them quickly." Elder Qingyang saw that Du Xiaofu was stunned and immediately placed the elixirs in Du Xiaofu's hand. The old man at the martial Emperor realm from the Divine Light Court was slapped down. He was so scared that his face turned pale. His reputation was greatly damaged, but he was more frightened and shocked. However, when he thought of the fact that he still had someone backing him up, he immediately raised his head and said to Elder Qingyang, "Sir, we are from the Divine Light Court. That brat stole our martial arts techniques. Do you really want to interfere in our affairs? The Divine Light Court is nothing. Are you trying to threaten me?" Elder Qingyang, who had the demeanor of a transcendent being, spoke in a completely different manner. He glared at the martial Emperor Realm Elder from the Divine Light Court and shouted, "Cut the crap. If you don't want to die, hurry up and get lost. Go back and tell Ming Dingtian that my name is Gu Qingyang. If the Divine Light Court dares to touch a single hair on my disciple, I will raise the entire Divine Light Court to the ground and kill everyone." He looked like an immortal, but his words were extremely vulgar. Many people's eyes trembled when they heard him. However, everyone understood the meaning behind his words. The elder did not care about the Divine Light Court at all. He did not care about the Divine Light Court at all. The martial emperor from the Divine Light Court's face twitched. He was gloomy and did not dare to say anything more. The strength of the other party's attack was enough to kill him instantly. Gu Qingyang. Then, he suddenly thought of someone. When he looked at Gu Qingyang again, his eyes were filled with shock. Scram! Trash like you don't have the qualifications for me to destroy you. If you don't leave, I don't mind making an exception. Elder Gu Qingyang glared at the old man, who had even less of a problem and didn't hold back at all. Sir, I will definitely bring your words back. The martial royal realm expert of the Divine Light Court gritted his teeth. He was unwilling to give up, but he did not dare to move at all. His life was naturally more important. At that moment, the Martial King Elder of the Divine Light Court picked up the Martial King, who had been unable to get up, and left. He did not have the time to care about the corpses of the other people of the Divine Light Court underground, lest he provoke the other party and killed him. After Du Xiaofu stuffed 2 marquis-grade healing elixirs into his mouth, he immediately took the Qianquan bags of the 5 Martial King realm cultivators of the Divine Light Court that he had just killed. The entire square was silent. No one had expected that everything would change so drastically because of the appearance of the sage-like elder. At this moment, the people of the Gongsun family looked the most embarrassed. The experts of the Divine Light Court had left. Thinking of the consequences, their faces became extremely interesting. Idiot, are you okay? Murong Xiang'er rushed over. After a few flashes, she appeared in the square and immediately went to Du Xiaofu's side. I'm fine. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly and put away the Qianquan bags. All right, kid, come with me. Elder Gu Qingyang turned around and looked at Du Xiaofu. His face was full of smiles, showing his 2 front teeth. Although he looked simple and naive, everyone knew that his strength was absolutely terrifying. Elder Gu, Du Xiaofu was stunned. Just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Elder Gu Qingyang. This is not the place to talk. You should heal first. I'll take you to a place and we can talk slowly. Those people of the Divine Light Court may come back. If you don't want to cause trouble for the Fertile Field City, you'd better leave first. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes, then looked at Murong Xiang and whispered in her ear. Your second sister is doing well. She asked me to come to the Murong family of the Fertile Field City to see you. She must miss you very much. Your eldest sister's daughter is called Dai Xingyu. She looks a little like you. With that, Du Xiaofu said to Elder Gu Qingyang, Elder, let's go. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 figures flew into the sky and gradually disappeared from everyone's sight, leaving a lot of guesses and shock in the Fertile Field City. Xiang'er, what did little brother say to you just now? Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanken landed on the square from the high platform and came to the side of Murong Xiang'er, whose beautiful face had changed color. What did Du Xiaofu say to make Murong Xiang'er react this way? This surprised both Murong Hanlin and Murong Hanken. Father, he said that second sister asked him to come. Dai Xingyu heard this, and her charming face slightly recovered. She raised her delicate face, blinked her eyelashes slightly, and looked at Murong Hanlin. He also said that eldest sister's daughter is called Dai Xingyu. The mountains were continuous and verdant, overlapping one another. The boundless forest was like the undulating waves of the sea, surging violently, majestic and magnificent. In the distance, it was early in the morning. The hazy distant mountains were shrouded in a layer of light gauze, and the shadows were indistinct. Amidst the misty clouds, it was sometimes far and sometimes near, sometimes far and sometimes far. It was like a few strokes of ink smeared across the boundless horizon. When the morning sun rose, a golden light rose from the east and immediately illuminated the earth. Roar, whether it was day or night, one could occasionally hear the roars of demon beasts coming from the depths of the mountain range. In the range of the valley, snakes, insects, and ants did not come near, and the fierce birds and beasts automatically stayed away. In the middle of the valley, there was a huge towering stone wall, surrounded by empty space. It was so tall that it looked like it was about to collapse. Inside the stone wall, there were many wild flowers, green grass, and clusters of moss. On top of the stone wall, an old man in a white robe sat cross-legged. His white beard swayed slightly, and his white hair fluttered in the wind. At this time, the morning sun rose, and his body was bathed in golden light. He looked even more like an immortal, making people feel awe. The old man was naturally Elder Gu Qingyang of the ancient heaven sect. After leaving Fertile Field City with Du Xiaofu, he took Du Xiaofu to a quiet place he occasionally passed by to heal his injuries. The area on top of the stone wall was not small. At this time, there was a young man with a purple broadsword on his back sitting cross-legged. It was naturally Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was wrapped in a faint golden light. His aura fluctuated evenly, and his face gradually recovered its rosy color. What kind of cultivation method does this kid cultivate? Why does his aura seem like the terrifying golden-winged rock clan? His injuries are also recovering very quickly. On Elder Gu Qingyang's old face, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile. It seemed that the more he looked, the more satisfied he was. There was an unconcealable smile on his face. Huff, a moment later, the faint golden light circle around Du Xiaofu's body slowly withdrew. A mouthful of turbid air was exhaled from his abdomen. His eyelashes moved slightly, and a pair of eyes opened on his resolute and determined face. A bright light shot out. Soon after, it slowly withdrew, turning into a clear and bright one. His originally deathly pale face already had quite a bit of redness at this moment. Looking at Du Xiaofu, who had stopped cultivating, Elder Gu Qingyang revealed a smile and said, "Little brat, your injuries have recovered quite well. More than half of your injuries have healed in 3 days. Your cultivation technique is quite good." Du Xiaofu stood up and bowed to Elder Gu Qingyang, who was sitting cross-legged, and said respectfully, "It's all thanks to Elder Gu's help. No need to be so polite." Elder Gu Qingyang stood up with a smile on his face and said, "I'm here to accept you as my disciple." "Disciple?" Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and looked at Elder Gu Qingyang. He said, "Elder, I already have a master and a sect. I'm afraid I can't take you as my master. Please forgive me." "Is your sect within the one sect, 2 religion, 3 sects, and 3 factions?" Elder Gu Qingyang suddenly asked. "No, my sect is in a remote area." Du Xiaofu shook his head and said. Elder Gu Qingyang smiled and said, "Then it doesn't matter. Many experts today have several sects, and even more masters. There is no limit to the number of experts. It's good to find more masters." After a pause, Elder Gu Qingyang continued, "Let me introduce myself first. I'm Gu Qingyang, an elder of the Ancient Heaven sect." Elder Gu Qingyang had a smile on his face. He knew very well what his words meant. In the entire central continent there were not many youths who could refuse him. To be able to take an elder of the Ancient Heaven sect as a master was undoubtedly to directly become an inner sect disciple of the Ancient Heaven sect. Moreover, it was a special existence among the inner sect disciples. It was enough to reach the sky in a single step. In the central continent there were not many youths who could refuse. It was a dream come true. Ancient Heaven sect. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered, and then he seemed to remember that the Ancient Heaven sect was one of the 9 great forces. It was an absolute colossus, even more powerful than the Divine Light Court. It was a terrifying force on par with the Sky Snake sect, the mysterious Talisman sect, and the mysterious Underworld sect. It was no wonder that Elder Gu Qingyang did not take the Divine Light Court seriously at all. "Elder Gu, thank you for your help. I will never forget it. I will repay you in the future." Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and said, "It's just that I really don't plan to take you as my master, nor do I plan to join any sect. Please forgive me." Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Elder Gu Qingyang was slightly stunned. It seemed that he did not expect Du Xiaofu to refuse him. It should be known that not only in the central continent, but even in the Ancient Heaven sect, there were many disciples who wanted him to take them as his disciple. However, this guy was not moved at all. Chapter 595. After a moment of silence and surprise, Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, "Lad, how does your sect compare to the Ancient Heaven sect?" Junior's current sect is naturally incomparable to the Ancient Heaven sect in terms of strength. However, in Junior's heart, my sect is my sect and cannot be easily changed. Senior, please forgive me. Please forgive me, Du Xiaofu said apologetically. Elder Gu Qingyang had helped him and even protected him for 3 days. Du Xiaofu was naturally extremely grateful. However, as a student of Tianwu Academy, Elder Zhou, Vice Headmaster Zhuge Qiangbang, and Great Elder Qin Yu had risked their lives for Tianwu Academy. This was a huge blow to Du Xiaofu. How could he leave Tianwu Academy so easily? You care about your sect. This proves that you are a person who values relationships. I am even happier because this also proves that I did not misjudge you. Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu with a comforting gaze. If Du Xiaofu had abandoned his original sect and joined the Ancient Heaven sect, he would have been happy but also a little regretful. However, Du Xiaofu was able to resist the temptation of the Ancient Heaven sect and wholeheartedly stayed in his original sect. This was enough to prove that he was a pure and kind person and was not a treacherous or evil person. This was even more commendable. From a certain perspective, one's nature was more important than one's talent. After a slight pause, Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, "But have you ever thought about it? If you stand on the shoulders of giants, you will be able to see even further. If you stand on a mountain, you will be able to see even more. In Fertile Field City, when you faced the Divine Light Court, you were helpless in the end and could only fight to the death. If you were a member of the Ancient Heaven sect, then the Divine Light Court would have to think twice if they wanted to touch you." Hearing Elder Gu Qingyang's words, Du Xiaofu's gaze flickered and he fell into deep thought. Elder Gu Qingyang continued, "If you join the Ancient Heaven sect, you will be able to obtain the best cultivation resources. No matter what trouble you cause outside, the Ancient Heaven sect will always be behind you. If you think that you have to rely on absolute training to become an expert, then you can also choose to train yourself. Joining the Ancient Heaven sect will only bring you benefits and no harm. As for your original sect, it will still be your sect. You have not Ancient Heaven sect, nor Zhuge. Have you lost your Ancient Heaven sect? When you become an absolute expert, your original sect will be proud of you. If you have enough ability, the Ancient Heaven sect will also be proud of you. If you take me as your master, you will not lose your previous master. You will only have one more master. You will have one more person to guide you on the path of cultivation. As for how far you can go in the future, that will depend on yourself. No master will be able to help you." After saying all this in one breath, Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu. There was some expectation in his face as he continued, "Your talent is very strong. I'm afraid it is comparable to those monsters in the Ancient Heaven sect. Although I very much want to take you as my disciple, I will not force you. Think about it carefully. When you have made up your mind, you can come to the Ancient Heaven sect to find me." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and said, "Senior, are you leaving?" At this moment, Du Xiaofu's thoughts were extremely intense. Without a doubt, Elder Gu Qingyang's words had greatly affected Du Xiaofu. This caused Du Xiaofu to think of many things at this moment. Indeed, even if he entered the Ancient Heaven sect, he would still be a member of Tianwu Academy. It was just that he would have another identity. He would still be a disciple of the Ancient Heaven sect in the future. However, this did not affect the fact that he had graduated from Tianwu Academy. Of course, it's time for me to return. All good things must come to an end. Think about it carefully. I will wait for you in the Ancient Heaven sect." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Gu Qingyang smiled faintly. With a wave of his white sleeves, there were no profound energy fluctuations under his feet as his figure flew into the sky and left. Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang's departing figure, Du Xiaofu's gaze trembled slightly. For a moment, his heart was in turmoil. He thought about how he had no place to go at this moment. Elder Gu Qingyang's words were reasonable. Joining the Ancient Heaven sect was indeed beneficial to him. The destruction of Tianwu Academy made Du Xiaofu realize how important it was to have a backer. The Ancient Heaven sect was undoubtedly suitable for him. As for Elder Gu Qingyang, he was extremely compatible with him. "Brat, are you going to acknowledge me as your master or not? I have already gone so far." In the sky, Elder Gu Qingyang soared into the sky. No one saw the nervous expression on Elder Gu Qingyang's face at this moment. How could Elder Gu Qingyang give up on a good seedling that he had chased for so long? If he could give up so quickly, he would not have been searching everywhere. Elder Gu Qingyang's departure was merely a scheme in his heart. This was called retreating in order to advance. Such a good seedling with such great talent was comparable to the treasured monstrous geniuses of the Manchu. Even with his status in the Manchu, he could not forcefully touch those monstrous geniuses. Otherwise, he would have used all means to take them as his disciple long ago. But now, if Du Xiaofu could take him as his master and climb up the mountain, then the sect would not be able to do anything to him. After so many years of vexation, he would be able to sweep away all of it. Is this move really not enough? Brat, don't force me. If you still don't acknowledge me as your master, I will have to tie you up and bring you back. At that time, it will hurt our relationship as master and disciple. Elder Gu Qingyang softly muttered. The further he went, the more anxious he became. In any case, no matter what, he would definitely not let go of such a good seedling. Disciple Du Xiaofu is willing to accept Senior Gu Qingyang as his master. Disciple pays his respects to master. Suddenly, a voice came from the top of the valley's stone wall and fell into Elder Gu Qingyang's ears. Qi! Elder Gu Qingyang's figure suddenly stopped in midair. He quickly turned his head and saw the purple-robed youth respectfully kneeling on the ground and kowtowing 3 times. Ha 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 ha, you bastards better watch out. Now, it will be time for you to cry. Elder Gu Qingyang's eyes were lifeless, and then he became excited. After a while, an absolute smile appeared on his face. The ancient heaven sect was one of the 9 great forces of the central continent. It controlled many empires in the Manchu. It was said that any one of the 9 great forces had experienced countless years of inheritance, and had always stood proudly in the central continent. This was enough to show the strength of the 9 great forces. The ancient heaven sect was located in the southeast of the central continent. The experts in the Manchu were as common as clouds. Any disciple that walked out of the ancient heaven sect would have a great reputation. The number of inner sect disciples who could become overlords, establish empires, and rule over a piece of land was uncountable. The ancient Heaven Mountain Range was one of the mountain ranges that shook the central continent. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of miles it was vast. It was said that the natural energy in the mountain range was dense and nourished all living things. There were countless strange flowers and herbs. The spiritual medicines and natural treasures were astonishing. More importantly, the effects of cultivating in the mountain range were much better than other places. There was another reason why the ancient Heaven Mountain Range was famous in the central continent. It was because one of the 9 great forces of the central continent, the ancient Heaven sect, was located in the ancient Heaven Mountain Range. The ancient Heaven sect was the sacred land of countless cultivators in the central continent. Countless young people yearned to become a member of the ancient Heaven sect since they were young. Whoosh! In the clouds high up in the sky, a huge sword was shuttling through the clouds. It was flying steadily and rapidly. The clouds parted on both sides, leaving a trail of air in the sky that did not dissipate for a long time. The huge sword was about 1.5 feet wide and 3 feet long. 2 figures were sitting cross-legged on it. They were Elder Gu Qingyang and Elder Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's body was shrouded in a faint golden light. His breathing was even and his aura was stable. There was still a trace of paleness on his face, but with the help of the medicinal pellets and the golden-winged rock technique, his face had already recovered its ruddy complexion. Xiaofu, we've arrived. Below us is the ancient Heaven sect. Elder Gu Qingyang's voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. Below the clouds, a vast mountain range was faintly discernible. Huh! Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seal, and the faint golden light on his body gradually retracted into his body. Then, he opened his eyes. An aura surged from his body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. The light in Du Xiaofu's eyes dimmed. He looked down at the sky. As the huge sword's speed became lower and lower, a vast and magnificent mountain range also appeared in front of him. The vast mountain range traversed the land. How vast and majestic was it! It contained and converged hundreds of rivers with its depth and magnanimity. Looking down from above, one could see that in the mountain range, there was a roaring waterfall that flowed down, and pine trees rose up and down. Huge peaks towered between heaven and earth. They seemed to be able to shine brightly in the four seasons. Within the mountain range, one could see many buildings covered in verdant greenery. As the huge sword moved forward, more and more buildings appeared, exuding an ancient aura. In front of us is the ancient heaven sect. We can't fly. Even the ancient heaven sect master can't pass through the mountain gate without entering. It's disrespectful to the sect. As soon as Elder Gu Qingyang's voice faded, the huge sword began to descend. When the huge sword completely descended, it appeared on a vast square. Du Xiaofu also jumped down from the huge sword with Elder Gu Qingyang and landed on the ground. Chapter 596. Swoosh! The huge sword shrunk and returned to the scabbard on Elder Gu Qingyang's back, causing Du Xiaofu's gaze to be slightly curious. However, when he looked around, he was even more shocked. The surrounding huge mountains were continuous. This square was actually formed by cutting off the top of a mountain. In front of the square was a suspension bridge that was over 1,000 feet long. The bridge was covered with wooden planks that connected to a mountain in front. At the peak of the mountain, the three large words Ancient Heaven Sect were engraved in a flamboyant manner. Looking at it, one could feel a vast aura surging over, causing one's heart to tremble. It was as if 100,000 mountains were collapsing, causing Du Xiaofu to immediately withdraw his gaze. Behind the mountain, there were continuous ancient buildings that were majestic and magnificent. Waves of vast aura slowly rippled. From the surrounding natural energy fluctuations, in addition to the talent of his pulse spirit, it was not difficult for Du Xiaofu to sense that there were many powerful symbol arrays hidden outside the mountain gate of the ancient sky sect. Greetings, Elder. The sound of rushing wind resounded. Soon after, many figures landed on the square. Their auras were not weak. All of them respectfully bowed. There was a total of over 10 young men and women. All of them were around 21 or 22 years old. However, their auras had all reached the martial lord level. As expected of the ancient sky sect. This caused Du Xiaofu to be involuntarily shocked. As expected of the ancient sky sect. The younger generation guarding the gate actually had such talent. Rise! Elder Gu Qingyang gestured for everyone to bow. After which, he said to Du Xiaofu beside him, Xiaofu, follow me. This is the ancient sky sect. Du Xiaofu nodded. Under the surprised gazes of the surrounding young men and women, he followed Elder Gu Qingyang onto the suspension bridge. The wooden planks on the bridge were ancient, as if they had withstood the passage of countless years. Clouds were faintly drifting in the surroundings, and the valley below was deep like an abyss, giving people the feeling that they were in the clouds. On the way to the ancient heaven sect, Du Xiaofu learned from Elder Gu Qingyang why Elder Gu Qingyang had come looking for him. It turned out that when he was chased by several kings on the central province's long river, he encountered many fierce beasts and array glyphs. In the end, he even picked up a storage ring, which turned out to be the ancient heaven sect's outer sect disciple's promotion to inner sect disciple. However, he accidentally broke into it and took away a Qiankun bag. It was supposed to be a reward for the first place in the assessment area. The middle-grade Dao Tool Heaven's Net and a kind of spiritual medicine liquid were also the rewards for the first place. However, they all fell into his hands in the end. After crossing the suspension bridge, they entered the ancient heaven sect. There was no extravagance or splendor, and there were traces of vicissitudes everywhere. The buildings were ancient. Greetings, Elder. Along the way, many disciples of the ancient heaven sect bowed respectfully when they saw Gu Qingyang. On the other hand, Du Xiaofu was shocked along the way. The young disciples of the ancient heaven sect he met all had extraordinary cultivation bases. Any one of them would be a rare genius in the Stone Dragon Empire or Tianwu Academy. However, these young disciples, who were considered geniuses in the outside world, didn't seem to have a high status in the ancient heaven sect. With so many geniuses gathered in the ancient heaven sect, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. No wonder the ancient heaven sect could remain one of the 9 major powers. With so many geniuses gathered here, it was enough to provide the ancient heaven sect with an endless stream of new blood. There would always be someone who could stand out and become a top expert, allowing the ancient heaven sect to stand tall. At the same time, Du Xiaofu was shocked to see so many geniuses gathered here, and they were all from the younger generation. At the same time, he was also a young man. Youthful blood always had a competitive heart. At this moment, he couldn't help but secretly look forward to walking his own path in the ancient heaven sect. Would he be able to look down on everyone in the ancient heaven sect? Xiaofu, the sect affairs office is on the left. You should report there first and receive your Manchu badge. This is a must-have item for the Manchu. After that, you can find me at the Tianmu Peak. I have to go find the sect master first, so I won't accompany you. Elder Gu Qingyang interrupted Du Xiaofu's hot-blooded thoughts, and roughly pointed in a direction. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, Although this is the ancient heaven sect isn't an ordinary place. It's not a tea house, nor is it a home. The competition here might be crueler than you imagine. If there is competition, there will be fighting. As long as you don't go overboard, the Manchu won't suppress you. Therefore, you have to be careful and don't let others bully you. Yes. Du Xiaofu nodded. Although he didn't understand the specific meaning of Elder Gu Qingyang's words, he could vaguely understand some of it. He was afraid that cultivating in the ancient heaven sect wouldn't be too peaceful. Wherever there were people, there would be fighting, let alone in a place like the ancient heaven sect where geniuses gathered. Every genius had their own temperament and pride. It would be strange if there weren't any fights when they were placed together. Du Xiaofu more or less understood this. If the ancient heaven sect was peaceful everywhere, it probably wouldn't have been able to become one of the 9 great powers. Only with competition would there be progress. This was the most powerful guarantee for the ancient heaven sect to nurture countless experts. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Gu Qingyang turned around and left. Du Xiaofu also turned around and headed in the direction Elder Gu Qingyang had pointed out. Along the way, he met many disciples of the ancient heaven sect, but none of them recognized Du Xiaofu, nor did they greet him. So this is the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu walked slowly through the ancient heaven sect, looking around. He felt like he was in a dream. Back then, he had come to the central continent to explore. How could he have imagined that he would return to the ancient heaven sect now? He remembered that when Guoming was in Bailing City, he had wanted to invite him to join the Profound Talisman sect. He had no intention of joining back then, but now he had joined the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu thought that this might be the will of the heavens. However, after half an hour, Du Xiaofu finally found the General Affairs Office in the direction Elder Gu Qingyang had indicated. It was a medium-sized courtyard. The square outside was filled with many young male and female disciples. The youngest was 17 or 18 years old, while the oldest was 22 or 23 years old. These young male and female disciples weren't old, but their auras were extremely strong. Only a few of them were at the Pulse Spirit realm. Most of them were at the Martial Lord realm. Du Xiaofu found a young man and asked. After confirming that this was the General Affairs Office, he also began to line up behind the crowd. From the discussions of the surrounding disciples, Du Xiaofu learned that these young male and female disciples were outer sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect. They had come to the General Affairs Office to receive their monthly daily necessities and a fixed amount of medicinal pills. However, it was said that the resources of the outer sect disciples were much worse than the inner sect disciples. While waiting in line and listening to the discussions around him, Du Xiaofu gained a general understanding of the ancient heaven sect. In the ancient heaven sect, not only were they disciples, but they were also princes and princesses of the various empires. However, in the ancient heaven sect, if one's talent wasn't enough, they could only be outer sect disciples. They were all treated the same. Princes and princesses didn't have any privileges in the ancient heaven sect. Inner sect disciples had a high status in the Manchu. Even their living quarters were different from the outer sect disciples. The ancient heaven sect was also filled with competition. Aside from not killing, there were countless fights every day. In the Manchu, there were even cases of people snatching treasures. However, this kind of thing couldn't be done anywhere. Instead, it had to be done in a place called the Sky Marshal Plaza. Otherwise, they would be severely punished by the Manchu. After waiting for more than an hour, it was finally Du Xiaofu's turn. However, at this time, there was also a long line behind Du Xiaofu. "Where's your badge and sect pass? You need to use your badge and sect pass to receive them." Inside the chore house, what opened the door to the outside was not a door, but a window. It was only the size of two heads, and a young man of about 28 or 29 years of age poked his head out and looked at Du Xiaofu. Just as Du Xiaofu was about to speak, a commotion suddenly came from the crowd behind him. Then, a loud shout entered Du Xiaofu's ears. "Brat, get out of the way! Let us receive it first. Step aside. It's the people from the Crouching Tiger Society. It's Jing Mingzhou. We can't afford to offend them. His elder brother has already become an inner sect disciple. It's a pity that he didn't pass the test. He's still an outer sect disciple." Amidst the commotion, some soft discussions could be heard. Figures immediately retreated, as if they didn't want to provoke anyone. At this moment, Du Xiaofu raised his head and saw a dozen young men with arrogant faces. They didn't care about the people in the line and walked straight to Du Xiaofu. There were a total of 13 young men, all of them between the ages of 20 to 23 or 24. They were clustered around a fat young man with a face full of fat. "Brat, didn't you hear clearly? Get out of the way, or we won't be polite." Seeing Du Xiaofu's dazed expression, the young man who had just scolded Du Xiaofu thought that Du Xiaofu had been scared silly and immediately shouted again. Du Xiaofu indifferently raised his head and looked at the young man who had just scolded him. He frowned slightly and his face started to show some displeasure. Then, he said, "First, watch your mouth. Second, if you want to do anything at the sect affairs office, you can queue up at the back." As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the surroundings suddenly became strangely quiet. Even the young man who looked to be in his late 20s behind the sect affairs office window looked at Du Xiaofu with some astonishment in his eyes. "Where did this brat come from? Doesn't he know the Crouching Tiger Society? I'm afraid this brat is in for some bad luck. He even dares to provoke the people of the Crouching Tiger Society." Sighs could be heard amidst the silence. Gazes after gazes were directed at Du Xiaofu, and all of them contained a strange fluctuation. "Little you wrote the last 2 chapters this afternoon. However, the plot was completely different from what I wanted. Therefore, I clenched my teeth and rewrote it, causing it to only be updated now. However, little you really didn't slack off today. I just wanted to write it better so that everyone would like it more." Little you sincerely apologizes for the delay in updating. Chapter 597. A fat young man, who was surrounded by a group of people, had an ugly expression on his face. He looked at Du Xiaofu with a gloomy expression. "Senior Brother Jing, are you done?" At this moment, a soft voice sounded. Then, a woman slowly walked over from behind the group of people. This woman looked to be in her 20s. She was extremely beautiful with fair skin and a pair of bright eyes. She exuded a classical Oriental beauty. The woman wore a long dress and had an extraordinary aura. She walked like a willow tree swaying in the wind. Her curves were curvaceous and she immediately attracted a lot of attention. Several young men followed behind her. "Junior Sistering, I'm almost done. It's just that I met someone who doesn't know his place. Just wait for a while." When the fat young man saw the woman, his gloomy face immediately turned into a smile. "Is that so? I'm in a hurry. Although the Muncha doesn't have many necessities each month, I don't care about them. The cultivation resources my cousin gave me are already enough. However, as a disciple of the ancient heaven sect, I naturally can't be an exception. I also need to come to the sect affairs office to collect my monthly necessities. the woman said gently. Her voice made people feel numb. Many of the surrounding young men stared blankly at her, but they didn't dare to look at her too obviously. Junior sistering, just leave it to me. I'll be done soon. When the fat young man heard this, he immediately nodded with a fawning look. He then lowered his head slightly and nodded at the young man who scolded Du Xiaofu first. A hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Brat, I'll give you one last chance. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being impolite. The young man who scolded Du Xiaofu first scolded again. The aura around him fluctuated. If Du Xiaofu didn't comply, he would immediately attack. I said line up. Du Xiaofu still said indifferently. Brat, you! The young man was enraged and his eyes were cold. Just as he was about to make a move, a delicate voice rang out. Wait, we're all from the same sect. Don't bully this junior brother. The one who had spoken was the beautiful lady. Her bright eyes scanned the surroundings. In the end, she seemed to have discovered that something was wrong with Du Xiaofu. With a faint smile on her lovely face, she slowly stepped forward. Her long skirt fluttered as a faint fragrance spread. She arrived in front of Du Xiaofu and said with a smile, Junior brother, I'm in a rush. Why don't I give you a spiritual-grade medicinal pill and you let me retrieve the muncher supplies first? Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and glanced at the beautiful woman. He glanced at the group of youths behind her and shook his head. Firstly, I don't intend to give way to you. You can queue up yourself. If I give way to you, it will be unfair to the people behind you. This guy may be a little stupid, but he really has character. Many people behind Du Xiaofu were furious when they saw someone cut in line, but they did not dare to say anything. Now that they heard what Du Xiaofu had said, they immediately began to admire him. However, there was also some pity in their admiration. Secondly, the smell of your perfume is too strong. Can you stay a little further away from me? It makes me feel a little uncomfortable and I'll sneeze. Du Xiaofu looked at the woman and said seriously. He did not seem to be joking at all. However, when Du Xiaofu said that, not only did many people's gazes change, but the woman's face also immediately stiffened. Something seemed to fluctuate in her bright eyes. She, Zhou Yinger, was in the ancient heaven sect. Putting aside the fact that she had a backer, there were more men than women in the ancient heaven sect. Although her beauty could not be compared to those few people, she was definitely one of the best. There were many young men who surrounded her every day, and all of them were willing to do anything just to make her smile. There were even some who were willing to pay any price in order to pursue her. Moreover, the backing behind Zhou Yinger was sufficient to allow her to do as she pleased within the entire ancient heaven sect even though she was still an outer sect disciple. That backing of hers was able to ensure her safety. Because of the existence of her backer, the entire ancient heaven sect, even the inner sect disciples, had to give her some face. But now, an unknown youth actually did not put her in his eyes at all in front of her. He even asked her to stay a little further away. Not to mention in the ancient heaven sect, even in her entire life, no one dared to speak to her like that. At that moment, Zhou Yinger seemed to have received too much of a shock. She actually became sluggish, but some resentment began to surge in her bright eyes. Brat, you're asking for a beating. The youth in luxurious clothes, who was the first to berate Du Xiaofu, could no longer suppress his temper. In front of a beauty, it was rare to find an opportunity to stand out. He was already unhappy with the purple-robed brat. His profound energy fluctuated, and his eyes were burning with anger. He clenched his fist and immediately threw it at Du Xiaofu. Many people in the surroundings felt pity for Du Xiaofu, but at that moment, they obviously did not dare to provoke this group of people. They could only watch and wait for the purple-robed youth to be taught a lesson. In the sect, there should not be any danger to his life, but it was possible that he would be bedridden for a few months. While the surrounding people were feeling regretful, they immediately heard a scream. The scream was so loud that it immediately silenced the surroundings. Then, everyone saw the youth in luxurious clothes, who had just made a move, rolling on the ground as he wailed in pain. He clenched his fist and did not know what had happened. My bones are broken. It hurts so much. The youth in luxurious clothes screamed. His voice was mournful, and from that scream, the crowd roughly understood that the bones of the youth in luxurious clothes had been shattered. Swish, swish. In an instant, the surrounding gazes immediately fell on Du Xiaofu. No one saw how the purple-robed youth had made his move, and no one even saw the purple-robed youth make his move. The youth in luxurious clothes' hand had already been shattered. This was too shocking. No wonder he dared to challenge the Crouching Tiger Society. It turned out that he had some ability. The sluggish, beautiful woman's bright eyes once again revealed a shocked expression. This outcome was clearly not something she had expected. Bananas, don't think that I'm easy to bully just because I'm new. Du Xiaofu looked around and did not even glance at the youth in luxurious clothes, who was wailing in pain. A cultivator who had just barely broken through to the martial marquis level was naturally unable to withstand a single blow. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was also angry. He had properly lined up to exchange for the emblem and ancestral token, but who knew that he would be bullied? His master, Elder Qingyang, had instructed him not to be bullied. This brat is actually new. Could it be that the Manchu has started recruiting new disciples recently? I haven't heard that our Manchu has been recruiting new disciples recently. His attack was ruthless enough. Shattering the bones is not as easy as breaking them. It's too difficult to recover. Even if he's lucky enough to recover, that hand will be very weak in the future. The surrounding people were quietly discussing. That youth who looked somewhat cultured and refined was really ruthless. He was also clean and did not hesitate at all. Newcomer, newcomer. Not far away, the fat youth who was in shock was also surrounded by people. He looked at Du Xiaofu and then at the beautiful woman, Zhou Ying'er. That was a woman who countless people in the Manchu could not catch up to. That purple-robed youth should have some strength. However, since he was new, he naturally did not have any background, so there was nothing to be worried about. Although Jingmingzhou did not pass the assessment to become an inner sect disciple, he was only a thin line away. If he was lucky, he would have passed it. With the cultivation of the martial marquis level at the peak of the Nirvana realm, he naturally did not believe that he could not do anything to that brat. Looking at the shocked, resentful, and dazed Zhou Ying'er, Zhang Mingzhou's fat face suddenly revealed a smile. He knew that his chance had come. It was as if he had suddenly found a chance to walk into Zhou Ying'er's heart. Brat, how dare you touch a member of the Crouching Tiger Society and not give face to junior sister Zhou Ying'er? You are courting death. Xing Mingzhou gradually walked toward Du Xiaofu. His fat face was twisted with a cold smile. As a result, his eyes almost could not be seen. His demeanor and expression made it seem as if Du Xiaofu was going to kneel and beg for mercy in front of him. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly and looked at Xing Mingzhou calmly. Ignorant brat, you still dare to glare at me? Have you just entered the Manchu? Then let me teach you how to respect your seniors. I will teach you how to behave. If I don't teach an ignorant brat like you a lesson today, you will think that the Crouching Tiger Society is a pushover. Seeing that Du Xiaofu was looking at him, the fat youth became even more arrogant. How could he not grab this opportunity to be in the limelight in front of Zhou Ying'er? This was a great opportunity. At this moment, Xing Mingzhou seemed to be able to imagine that not long later, Zhou Ying'er would be lying in his arms under the moonlight, attracting the envious gazes of everyone. His fat body would even be able to press down on her delicate and fair body. Haha, what a reckless brat. The dozen or so youths who had been clustered behind Xing Mingzhou immediately roared with laughter. Brat, I will make sure that you don't even have the chance to kowtow and admit your mistakes today. How dare you disregard our Crouching Tiger Society and provoke junior sister Zhou Ying'er? You must be tired of living. Xing Mingzhou listened to the roaring laughter around him and became even more arrogant. Recently, he had not passed the test to become an inner sect disciple, so he was in a bad mood. But now, thinking about the beautiful future, the haze in his heart was swept away. It had been a long time since he had been so happy. However, happiness was a very mysterious thing. As the saying went, extreme joy begets sorrow. Jing Mingzhou seemed to be like that now. Happy, Jing Mingzhou was very happy. But at this moment, he saw the purple-robed youth not far away from him raise his hand. The purple-robed youth raised his hand. There was no superfluous action. He just raised his hand. It was simple, clean, and neat. Chapter 598. Slap! There was a wave of profound qi, and the aura was overbearing. Then, a crisp sound of a slap was heard. Immediately after, Zheng Mingzhou, who was still overjoyed, felt a burning sensation on his face, as if he had been scalded by a pair of fire tongs. At the same time, Zheng Mingzhou even felt that the left side of his face had been smashed. A huge force landed on his face like a thunderbolt. Pfft! His teeth loosened, and blood was spat out along with his teeth. Zheng Mingzhou did not even have the time to scream before his body was sent flying. He was like a kite with a broken string. He flew dozens of feet away, and then landed heavily on the square, causing the ground to shake. When Zheng Mingzhou landed on the ground, he let out a miserable cry. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and half of his face was already swollen like a pig's head. His face, which was already fat, was now swollen like a super big bun. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. It was a dead silence. All of the surrounding young men and women, including Zhou Ying'er, could clearly see that when faced with Zheng Mingzhou, who was at the peak of the Nirvana realm and the Martial Lord realm, the purple-robed young man only raised his hand and sent Zheng Mingzhou flying with a simple slap. He sent Zheng Mingzhou flying with a single slap. It was a simple and clean move. As disciples of the ancient heaven sect, how could they be simple? Even if they were not inner sect disciples, they were still geniuses in the outside world. Naturally, they knew how strong the strength was needed to send Zheng Mingzhou flying with a slap. To do this, it was definitely not something that could be done simply by being slightly stronger than Zheng Mingzhou. Even those at the peak of the complete martial lord realm would find it difficult to do so. But now, the purple-robed young man in front of them had done it. Moreover, he had done it so casually and cleanly. Zheng Mingzhou crawled up and covered half of his face. The almost invisible gaze on his swollen face was filled with shock and fear. Then, it was filled with hatred and resentment. At this moment, Zheng Mingzhou's mood was completely different from before. It was as if he had fallen from heaven to hell. Originally, Zheng Mingzhou wanted to show off in front of the beauty, but he did not expect to be humiliated instead. Everything was ruined, so how could he just let it go? Brat, just you wait. I won't let you go. Just you wait. Zheng Mingzhou covered his face with his hand as blood dripped from his mouth. Then, he turned around and left. As for making a move, Zheng Mingzhou naturally did not dare to do so. Although he was resentful, it did not mean that he was a fool. The other party was able to send him flying with a single slap. The other party's strength was already there for all to see. If Zheng Mingzhou were to make a move, he would only be asking for humiliation. Seeing Zheng Mingzhou leave, the dozen or so youths from the Crouching Tiger Society looked at each other. None of them dared to stay behind. Immediately, they retreated and left. They were afraid that when the purple-robed youth was in a bad mood, he would slap each of them. Zhou Ying'er didn't know if she was frightened or shocked, but her bright eyes were a little dazed. Du Xiaofu did not pay attention to the astonished and frightened gazes around him. He walked toward the school affairs office's window and said to the 28 or 29-year-old youth, "I'm a new disciple. I'm here to receive my badge and sect plate." Inside the window, the 28 or 29-year-old youth looked at Du Xiaofu. After being shocked for a while, he recovered and immediately asked Du Xiaofu, "What's your name? How old are you? Are you a martial cultivator or a spiritual symbol master? If you're a martial cultivator, you'll receive medicinal pills to strengthen your profound qi and other necessities every month. As for spiritual symbol masters, they'll receive medicinal pills to strengthen their spiritual soul strength and other necessities." The school affairs office's responsibility did not include getting to the bottom of things. Although the Manchu was not recruiting new disciples, this youth was a little curious as to why someone would come to receive their sect plate and badge at this time. However, since the person was already in the Manchu, there was naturally a reason. This was not under the jurisdiction of this youth. Naturally, there was no need for him to continue asking. It would not be good if he offended someone behind the scenes. To be able to enter the sect at this time, one had to have some relationship with someone in the Manchu. My name is Du Xiaofu. I'm not even 18 yet. I'm a spiritual symbol master. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and replied. Between a martial cultivator and a spiritual symbol master, the latter would receive medicinal pills to strengthen their spiritual soul strength and other necessities every month. Du Xiaofu naturally did not hesitate to choose a spiritual symbol master. Originally, Du Xiaofu wanted to say that he was not only a spiritual symbol master, but also a martial cultivator. However, when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. He felt that it would not be good to be too high profile. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the young man raised his head and looked at Du Xiaofu again in surprise. Du Xiaofu's aura that sent Jing Mingzhou flying with a slap didn't seem like a talisman master. Okay, your information has been registered. This is your badge and sect token. Drip your spiritual soul strength, and you will be able to activate them. If there's anything you don't understand, just ask your senior brothers and sisters. After the youth finished speaking, he handed over the ancient heaven sect's badge and an antique jade token. The engravings on them flickered with a gentle luster. Many thanks. Du Xiaofu took the badge and sect token and put them away. Then he turned around and looked around. Finally, he asked the youth behind him, May I ask how to get to the Tianmu Peak? The youth looked to be in his 20s. He was very thin and not very tall. He looked a little sallow and emaciated. If it wasn't for the fact that cultivators didn't need to eat much after reaching a certain level of cultivation, people might even suspect that he had been abused by the ancient heaven sect and didn't have enough to eat. The youth looked at Du Xiaofu. On his thin face, there was a hint of shock in his clear eyes. Then he smiled, wanting to get closer to Du Xiaofu. He said, This new junior brother, do you not know how to get to the Tianmu Peak? I'll take you there. Didn't you have to line up to get your daily necessities from the Manchu? Du Xiaofu was puzzled. After he left, it was this guy's turn to line up. The thin youth was very enthusiastic. He pulled Du Xiaofu's hand and left. He said, It's okay. It's the same if I come tomorrow. I'll take you to the Tianmu Peak first. Du Xiaofu couldn't say anything else. He could only follow the thin youth. Zhou Yinger stood there in a daze. A few young men stood behind her and looked at Du Xiaofu's back. Their bodies were trembling. So he's called Du Xiaofu. He's a spiritual talisman master. He's not even 18, but he's already so powerful. It's really unbelievable. He's probably comparable to those guys in the inner sect. Zhou Yinger looked at the back of the youth with a broadsword on his back as he left. After a long time, a trace of coldness flashed in her bright eyes. She bit her red lips and said softly, You dare to treat me like this? I'll definitely not let you off. There will be a day when it'll be too late for you to regret it. Within the ancient heaven sect, Du Xiaofu was led to the Tianmu Peak by the enthusiastic thin youth. Along the way, Du Xiaofu learned a lot about the ancient heaven sect from the enthusiastic thin youth. From the thin youth, Du Xiaofu learned that the thin youth was called Gu Zhangyu. In the Manchu, he was known as the Skinny Monkey. He was also a spiritual talisman master. However, his main cultivation was alchemy talisman master and his secondary cultivation was weapon talisman master. However, for some unknown reason, Gu Zhangyu's talent was mediocre. Although he was an alchemy talisman master, he didn't have many achievements in alchemy. It was said that even though he was a 5-star mysterious realm cultivator, he often made mistakes when refining spiritual-grade elixirs. If it weren't for his identity as a spiritual talisman master, Gu Zhangyu wouldn't even be able to become an outer sect disciple of the ancient heaven sect. From Gu Zhangyu, Du Xiaofu learned that the ancient heaven sect was roughly divided into two regions, the inner sect region and the outer sect region. There were countless outer sect disciples in the ancient heaven sect. They were spread across many places in the Central Plains. Naturally, there were even more places under the ancient heaven sect's control. However, the number of young outer sect disciples who stayed in the ancient heaven sect was much smaller. There were only about 100,000 of them. There were more than 100,000 outer sect disciples in the younger generation. This number was enough for Du Xiaofu to be flabbergasted. Any outer sect disciple was a genius in the outside world. However, there were so many of them in the ancient heaven sect. However, the number of inner sect disciples in the ancient heaven sect was much smaller. It was said that every year, the ancient heaven sect would select a few outer sect disciples to become inner sect disciples. The ancient heaven sect had a total of 8 assessment sites. In each site, less than 100 people would be selected to become inner sect disciples. Those who had outstanding results would be taken in by the elders and experts in the sect. They would be heavily nurtured. However, out of the 100,000 outer sect disciples every year, less than 800 would have a chance to become inner sect disciples. There wasn't even a 1% chance. This was enough to show how difficult it was. As for outer sect disciples, they only had 2 chances to take the assessment in their lifetime. After that, they would never be able to become inner sect disciples. Junior brother Du Xiaofu, the person you beat up today is someone from the Crouching Tiger Society. You have to be careful in the future. The people from the Crouching Tiger Society are not to be trifled with. They definitely won't let you off easily. Gu Zhangyu explained the situation in the ancient heaven sect while reminding Du Xiaofu to be wary of the Crouching Tiger Society. What's the background of the Crouching Tiger Society? Is it very strong? The contents of the new volume Ancient Heaven Ming Yang. Originally, the contents of the first few chapters should have been divided into volumes. However, I've been thinking about how to better write the contents of this volume. This is also the beginning of the Central Plains. Today, I finally came up with the outline of this volume. Xiao Yu continued to write. Chapter 599. What's the background of the Crouching Tiger Society? Is it very strong? Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. From their conversation, he had a good impression of this enthusiastic Gu Zhangyu. Actually, this Gu Zhangyu was only 18 years old. It was just that he was too thin, and his face was sallow from hunger. He looked very old, like he was 20 years old. You just entered the ancient heaven sect, so naturally you don't know. Gu Zhangyu looked at Du Xiaofu and didn't find it strange. He patiently and carefully explained. There are many outer sect disciples, so naturally, there are many big and small factions. Many disciples form factions, and there are many benefits involved in this. For example, the sale of pills, spiritual weapons, practitioner weapons, and so on. After pausing for a moment, Gu Zhangyu licked his dry lips and continued. As it relates to the benefits of the Tao, the various factions are constantly fighting. In this kind of competition, many factions have grown stronger. Among them, the Crouching Tiger Society is not weak. That Jing Mingzhou you beat up, his brother Jing Zhizhou, became an inner sect disciple not long ago. It's said that the actual leader of the Crouching Tiger Society is a fellow on the inner sect's bronze ranking called Yu Tianyu. Manchu disciples forming factions, does the Manchu not care? Du Xiaofu asked in surprise. According to what Gu Zhangyu said, there was another underworld within the ancient heaven sect. The Manchu naturally won't care. This is the tradition of the ancient heaven sect. Some factions in the Manchu have even been passed down for many generations. Gu Zhangyu said to Du Xiaofu. In any case, in the Manchu, as long as no lives are lost, the elders, protectors, and deacons all turn a blind eye. Of course, there are some things that have to be considered. You will slowly understand in the future. Looks like the ancient heaven sect is really a little special. Du Xiaofu was a little surprised. It seemed that the ancient heaven sect had acquiesced to this situation in the hope that more experts would emerge in the competition. Only true experts would be able to stand out and stand out. Many people thought that the disciples of some large sects were like flowers in a greenhouse. They only relied on rich resources to become experts. Little did he know that to be able to become a large sect, how could the experts inside be short-sighted? How could they not have thought of this? The young disciples of the large sects might not have walked out of those days where blood dripped from the tip of a blade every day, but they were definitely not flowers in a greenhouse. Take the Ancient Heaven sect for example. Even the outer sect disciples of the Ancient Heaven sect couldn't live comfortably. Competition was everywhere, and the competition between geniuses was even more intense. Whoosh whoosh. Many rushing wind sounds suddenly sounded in the air behind them. Quite a number of figures were hurriedly rushing over. With a couple of flashes, they immediately landed in front of Du Xiaofu and Gu Zhangyu. Wave after wave of powerful and vigorous auras that broke through the net immediately surrounded Du Xiaofu and Gu Zhangyu. Not good, it's the people from the Crouching Tiger Society. They've caught up. Seeing those figures descend, Gu Zhangyu's expression changed greatly. Gu Zhangyu naturally recognized those people. They were all from the Crouching Tiger Society, and they were all experts of the Crouching Tiger Society. Especially when Gu Zhangyu saw the two young men at the front, his face was even more shocked. He couldn't help but say, "Jingzhizhou Yu Tianyo." Du Xiaofu looked around. There were more than 30 people in total. Waves of martial lord realm aura spread out, especially the two young men at the front. One of the young men in tight clothes had already reached the peak of the martial lord realm. He was probably only a step away from the martial king realm. However, the other young man in embroidered clothes had an outstanding temperament. His aura was also clearly at the initial stage of the martial king realm. He was a genuine martial king realm expert. And between the two of them, Du Xiaofu could see Jing Mingzhou, who he had sent flying with a slap not long ago outside the clan affairs office. "Big brother, Brother Yitian, it's this new kid. This kid hit me and doesn't put our Crouching Tiger Society in his eyes." At this moment, Zheng Mingzhou saw Du Xiaofu. When enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. He held his face that was still in pain, pointed at Du Xiaofu, and said in a wrong voice to the two young men in tight clothes and embroidered clothes. At this moment, Zheng Mingzhou's gaze was fixed on Du Xiaofu. His eyes were filled with coldness. Coincidentally, he had met his big brother and Brother Yitian. It was time for this kid to be unlucky. Since he dared to slap him, he would definitely repay it 100 times over. He would make this kid regret it. "It's the strong cultivators from the Crouching Tiger Society. The ones in front are Jing Zhizhou and Yu Tiano." At this moment, Gu Zhangyu's voice quietly landed beside Du Xiaofu's ears. From his voice, it was not hard to tell that Gu Zhangyu was very serious and nervous at this moment. "Kid, you're new here?" Following Gu Zhangyu's words, the young man in tight clothes, Jing Zhizhou, looked at Du Xiaofu with a cold gaze. His own brother had been slapped by someone. He had just become an inner sect disciple not long ago, and was in the limelight. How could he let someone go at this time who dared to touch his brother? Du Xiaofu glanced at Jing Zhizhou and said softly, "I'm new here. Do you have any business with me?" TSK, since you're new here, there's a need for us senior brothers to teach you some rules." After confirming that the other party was new, Jing Zhizhou became even more fearless. He was just a newcomer. With his status as an inner sect disciple, as long as he did not take this kid's life, nothing would happen to him even if he beat this kid until he was crippled. As his voice fell, the profound qi in Jing Zhizhou's body surged. Just as he was about to make a move, he saw the purple-robed youth in front of him looking straight at him. His gaze was inexplicably sharp and frightening, causing his heart to tremble. "All of you get lost. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." An indifferent voice came out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. The continuous harassment had made Du Xiaofu truly angry. He was afraid that if he did not truly intimidate them today, there would be endless trouble in the future. The strong were respected, and the weak were bullied. This was one of the rules of survival in the Ancient Heaven sect. Upon hearing Du Xiaofu's words, several gazes rippled with surprise. Even Gu Zhangyu, who was beside Du Xiaofu, instantly changed his expression. He slightly raised his head and looked at Du Xiaofu in shock. This was the inner sect disciple Jingjizhou and the inner sect's bronze-ranking expert, Yu Tianyu. This little junior brother named Du Xiaofu actually did not place them in his eyes. At this moment, the expression in the eyes of the youth in embroidered clothes gradually changed. It began to become a little gloomier without leaving a trace. I've seen many new students like you. You'll be fine in the future once you know some rules. As his gloomy voice sounded, everyone could hear the suppressed anger in Jingjizhou's voice. As he spoke, his eyes were filled with a sharp chill. The profound qi in his body immediately surged. Like an afterimage, he rapidly charged towards Du Xiaofu. Boom! At this moment, Jingjizhou did not underestimate his opponent. He knew the strength of his younger brother. Since the latter was able to send him flying with a slap, he was definitely an expert. Therefore, the peak of the perfect martial marquis stage, which was only a step away from the martial king stage, whistled and fluctuated. It collapsed space, causing people's hearts to tremble. Bright Eye Fist. Profound qi surged and symbols flickered. Jingjizhou clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. The mysterious rune energy in front of his fist immediately swept out like a wave, rolling and surging, sweeping in all directions. This Jingjizhou was indeed worthy of being an inner sect disciple at the peak of the perfect martial marquis stage. Although his cultivation was at the perfect martial marquis stage, his strength was probably only at the initial stage of the martial king stage in the outside world. The terrifying aura of the fist made one's heart tremble inexplicably. In an instant, it swept in front of Du Xiaofu. It even shook Du Xiaofu's purple robe, causing it to flutter incessantly. Humph! At this moment, a trace of coldness flashed across Du Xiaofu's eyes. At this moment, he was somewhat angry. A dazzling symbol suddenly surged out, like a divine radiance spreading out. Suddenly, 21 array flags condensed in both of his hands. Swoosh swoosh. The 21 array flags, which were spreading out astonishing fluctuations, immediately wrapped up the space in front of them with lightning speed and trajectory. The profound mysteries were tightly connected, turning into a dazzling symbol light pillar and disappearing. At this moment, everyone's eyes suddenly trembled, and their faces changed greatly. Even the youth in embroidered clothes was no exception. His eyes were instantly filled with shock. At this moment, when Jingjizhou saw the 21 array flags appear in Du Xiaofu's hands, his eyes fiercely narrowed. Condensing 21 array flags, this was a genuine 6-star talisman master. Was this really a newcomer? If he had known that his opponent was at this level of cultivation, he would definitely not have the courage to make a move. Oh no, it's a 6-star talisman master. Shocked voices rang out one after another. The youths of the Crouching Tiger Society immediately fled. If they were to be trapped in a 6-star's initial ascension symbol array, they knew very well what the consequences would be. Even a martial king initial ascension symbol array could forget about escaping. Boom! At this moment, the people of the Crouching Tiger Society still wanted to escape, but it was already too late. The entire space was rumbling and trembling, and dazzling symbols spread out in the air. In a short moment, an astonishingly huge array was condensed in the sky, immediately covering the surrounding space. The faint terrifying pressure from the array made one's heart tremble. Swoosh swoosh. At this moment, many of the ancient Heaven Sect's disciples nearby felt the huge commotion and immediately looked over. Then, figures immediately flew over. Awoowa. The array's symbols surged in the sky, and an endless amount of energy light twisted and condensed in the array. In the end, it turned into many demonic wolf shadows. The demonic wolf shadows were surging with power, as if they were alive, and filled with a ferocious aura. The demonic wolf shadows shuttled back and forth in the array, roaring ferociously and releasing a ferocious pressure. Bang bang bang. Inside the array, the space was chaotic. It seemed that there were people attacking with all their might, but it was useless. They could not break the array at all. Today's update is complete. Chapter 600. Translator, H2DH2 Mr. However, the attacks did collide with the surface of the talisman array. Dazzling runic energy storms shot into the sky and scattered in all directions, forming circles of energy ripples that spread out in the air. After reaching a certain point, they automatically disappeared. This scene did not last for long, but in a short period of time, it attracted many people around the talisman array. They all looked at the terrifying 6-star beginner-level talisman array in shock. Oh! The phantom of the demon wolf shuttled back and forth, then disappeared. When everything calmed down, in the chaotic space, many figures appeared before the eyes of many onlookers. It's bronze ranking UT&I. It's Xing Zhizhou and the others from the Crouching Tiger Society. The onlookers were shocked. Someone immediately recognized UT&I, Xing Zhizhou, and the others. Puchi Puchi. At the same time, the 30 or so members of the Crouching Tiger Society, in order of strength, all spat out blood from their mouths. Then, their figures fell to the ground like cotton. Finally, it was Jing Mingzhou, Xing Zhizhou, and UT&I. One figure after another lay limply on the ground, dripping with blood. At this moment, their pale faces were filled with fear and shock. They could not even get up. Only they themselves knew that not only were their internal organs heavily injured, but even their souls were also injured. This was the most serious injury. At this moment, perhaps they finally understood what kind of existence they had provoked today. Although their opponent was a newcomer, he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. A beginner 6-star formation master. If they had known his cultivation and strength, they would not have dared to find trouble with him. They would have avoided him as soon as possible. A beginner 6-star formation master! Gu Zhangyu was shocked. Just now, he had been standing beside Du Xiaofu. At this time, he was still in shock. Originally, he thought that he was unlucky this time. He didn't expect that this scene would happen in the end. The so-called newcomer beside him turned out to be a 6-star array master. Let's go! Du Xiaofu gestured to Gu Zhangyu. He didn't pay any more attention to the people lying on the ground. His purple robe flicked, and he swaggered off with his hands clasped behind his back. He believed that with this deterrence, even if he were to run into trouble in the ancient heaven sect, it would be a lot less troublesome. When Gu Zhangyu heard this, he was still in shock for a while before he came back to his senses. Seeing that Du Xiaofu was already far away, he immediately chased after him. Who is that person? Why haven't I seen him before? That purple-robed young man is actually a 6-star beginner talisman master. I don't think I've heard of him before. Looking at the young man with the purple broadsword on his back sleeve, the surrounding people immediately started to whisper as they tried to guess the young man's identity. With the purple-robed Yu Sage, he was already a 6-star talisman master. Among the younger generation of the ancient sky sect, there were probably only a handful of people like him. Senior Du, I didn't expect you to be a 6-star talisman master, and an array talisman master. Senior Du, how did you cultivate? It's so terrifying. It's incredible. Senior Du, how did you come to the ancient sky sect? Along the way, Gu Zhangyu was shocked and asked a lot of questions to Du Xiaofu. However, it seemed that he did not get a definite answer from Du Xiaofu. In the end, he could only give up. However, his eyes were full of admiration for Du Xiaofu. He even called Du Xiaofu Senior Du Xiaofu. Among the same generation, strength was the most important. This was generally the case, unless there were special circumstances. Senior Du, Tianmu Peak is just ahead. I can only send you up to here. Further ahead is the inner sect disciple area. Inner sect disciples can enter the outer sect disciple area at will, but outer sect disciples are not allowed to enter the inner sect disciple area. Otherwise, they will be severely punished. Gu Zhangyu pointed to a huge mountain on the left among the towering peaks in front of them and said to Du Xiaofu, "Thank you." Du Xiaofu smiled at Gu Zhangyu. That's the inner sect disciple area. Do you want to go in too? Gu Zhangyu seemed to have just remembered that Du Xiaofu was also an outer sect disciple. Someone told me to go. I think it shouldn't be a problem, Du Xiaofu said. Is that so? Gu Zhangyu's eyes moved. At this time, he could only think that Du Xiaofu really had a background and backing in the Manchu, Otherwise, how could he enter the Manchu at this time and even dare to seriously injure Yu Tianyo and the others? Gu Zhangyu did not think too much about it and left. Du Xiaofu watched Gu Zhangyu leave and continued to walk along a wide stone path. Not far away, he encountered a group of young men and women. They seemed to be carrying out some mission. When they saw that Du Xiaofu was unfamiliar, they naturally questioned him. When Du Xiaofu said that Elder Gu Qingyang had told him to go to Tianmu Peak, although the young men and women were suspicious, they did not stop him and immediately let him go. They even gave Du Xiaofu a shortcut and told Du Xiaofu that if he had something to do in the Manchu, he could fly in the Manchu. However, ordinary outer sect disciples did not have the ability to fly in the Manchu. Inner sect disciples were an exception. With someone giving him directions and even telling him that he could fly, Du Xiaofu smoothly arrived at the foot of Tianmu Peak. It was a huge mountain peak, but it seemed to be located in a quiet place in the Manchu. The surroundings were quiet, and on the mountain peak, there were many buildings hidden in the greenery. When Du Xiaofu leaped onto the mountain peak, it was already dusk. The sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun shrouded the mountain peak. The setting sun shone on a simple and elegant courtyard with an ancient aura on the mountain peak. Du Xiaofu appeared outside the courtyard and sized up the simple and elegant courtyard. A figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu's eyes. It was an old man in his 60s. He was wearing a plain robe, and there were traces of spatial fluctuations around him that were difficult to detect. Martial Emperor Realm. When Du Xiaofu saw this old man, he could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. The aura emitted from this old man was not inferior to that of Vice Dean Zhuge Qiangbang. He was definitely at the Martial Emperor Realm. Who are you? Why have you come to Tianmu Peak? The old man was also sizing up Du Xiaofu. He looked at Du Xiaofu, as if he was unable to detect Du Xiaofu's specific aura. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Disciple Du Xiaofu. Master, Elder Gu Qingyang asked me to come. Du Xiaofu bowed and replied. So you are junior brother. When the old man heard that, his expression changed. Then, a smile appeared on his face. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, We have been guessing when Master would accept a junior brother for us. It seems like it is you. Where is Master? Has he returned? Master seems to have gone to look for sect leader. Du Xiaofu looked at the old man in front of him and asked curiously. You are? The old man smiled and said, My name is Yuanli, I'm your third senior brother. Strictly speaking, there's still a senior sister and 3 senior brothers above you. It's just that they aren't in the sect right now. If there's a chance in the future, you guys will meet again. Greetings, third senior brother. Just now, Du Xiaofu had already guessed the other party's identity in his heart. However, he did not expect his third senior brother to be so old. You are welcome. Master is not back yet. Come in and have a rest. I will bring you around to familiarize you with this place. You will be staying here in the future. The old man was very warm and kind like an elder brother. Then, he brought Du Xiaofu to familiarize himself with Tianmu Peak. From his third senior brother Yuanli, Du Xiaofu found out that Tianmu Peak was the territory of Master Gu Qingyang. From his tone, it was not difficult for Du Xiaofu to know that Master Gu Qingyang's position in the Manchu was not low. Yuanli was curious about how Du Xiaofu had been accepted by Master. Du Xiaofu did not know how to explain and only gave a rough explanation. Naturally, he did not mention anything about the assessment area. Therefore, Yuanli was quite surprised. However, he did not ask any further. Night gradually fell. Master Gu Qingyang had not returned yet. Under Yuanli's arrangements, Du Xiaofu temporarily settled down in a quiet room in the courtyard. The room was very clean. Although no one had stayed in it for a long time, it was still very clean. It was probably cleaned frequently. Moonlight shrouded the courtyard. Standing on Tianmu Peak, the surroundings were shrouded in clouds. It was like a fairyland. Du Xiaofu's figure stood on the peak, looking at the bright moon that was like a jade plate, thinking about the recent events. After a long time, he murmured softly, Father, Mother, Xiaojing, Little Qing, Little Demon Du, Little Tiger. Late at night, Du Xiaofu returned to his room and sat cross-legged on his bed. This time, entering the ancient heaven sect, one of the 9 great powers of the Central Plains, might be an opportunity for him. He must become a true expert as soon as possible. Walala! A moment later, Du Xiaofu's hand seals condensed and began to breathe. His body was enveloped in a circle of faint white light. The light became more and more dazzling. Finally, it was like a white divine light that enveloped his entire body. The next day, the first rays of the morning sun shone. The mountains were faintly discernible under the white sky. Then, the red sun rose. The mountain peaks, cliffs, and steep rocks were dyed red by the rays of the morning sun. It was exceptionally magnificent. Huff! A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his throat. Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seals and stopped his breathing. He felt that the spiritual force in his Naiwan palace was becoming more and more solid. Under the mysterious incomplete cultivation method, it seemed that he was about to have a breakthrough in the cultivation of a spirit symbol master. However, this sign of a breakthrough in the spirit symbol master realm seemed to be hindered by the temporary stagnation of his martial path. Chapter 601. Yuanli, hand over the person! At this moment, a loud shout came from Tianmu Peak. Du Xiaofu, who was in his room, could faintly hear it. Du Xiaofu frowned. He did not know what was going on. However, he was currently on Tianmu Peak. Tianmu Peak was his master Gu Qingyang's territory. Naturally, he had to go and take a look. When Du Xiaofu went outside, he saw third senior Yuanli facing several figures. The one in front was an old man who looked to be in his 60s. His aura was definitely above the martial emperor realm. He was arguing with third senior Yuanli about something. Behind the old man in his 60s, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly flickered. He saw 2 familiar figures. It was Jing Zhizhou, who was severely injured by him yesterday, and another young man called Yu Tianyo. Seeing Yu Tianyo and Jing Zhizhou, Du Xiaofu already knew why they were here. Instead, a youth in short clothes beside Yu Tianyo and Jing Zhizhou attracted Du Xiaofu's attention. This youth looked to be around 23 or 24 years old. When he was serious, he was like a cold star. His straight nose was as cold as ice. The side of his face was as sharp as a knife. His features were clear and handsome. Yuanli, hand over the person! I found out that the kid came to Tianmu Peak. The old man's voice was very loud. He looked as if he was here to vent his anger. His eyes were bright, and he was wearing a plain robe. He did not have a good attitude towards Yuanli. Yuanli had a smile on his face the whole time. No matter how much the old man roared, he just smiled and said, Elder Kong, the person you're looking for is indeed on my Tianmu Peak. However, if there's anything, you can talk to my master. Yuanli, don't use Elder Qingyang to pressure me. Now that Elder Qingyang is not here, you are in charge of Tianmu Peak. You have to hand over the person. The person called Elder Kong was still unwilling to give up. His aura was overbearing. After sizing up Yuanli for a short while, Du Xiaofu directly walked to Yuanli's side. He nodded and bowed, but did not say anything. As for the old man and Yu Tianyi and the others, Du Xiaofu acted as if he didn't see them at all. Little junior brother, you go back first. When Yuanli saw Du Xiaofu, there was a slight fluctuation in his eyes, but he still had a smile on his face. Master, that's him. At the same time, Yu Tianyo and Jing Zhizhou immediately recognized Du Xiaofu. There was still some lingering fear in their eyes, but at this moment, they seemed to have found the most stable backing. They immediately pointed at Du Xiaofu. When he heard this, Elder Kong's gaze immediately stared intently at Du Xiaofu. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Looking at Du Xiaofu's age, it seemed that he was even younger than he had imagined. From the 2 disappointing disciples, Elder Kong already knew some things. His 2 disciples and 30 over outer sect disciples were all injured by a new disciple called Du Xiaofu. That new disciple was young, but he was already a 6-star soul symbol master who could set up a 6-star beginner level symbol array. When he saw Du Xiaofu, who seemed to be 17 or 18 years old, Elder Kong's heart was moved. Such a young 6-star soul symbol master, and an array symbol master at that. He naturally knew what this meant. Talent was definitely rare. If it was an ordinary disciple fight, Elder Kong would have been too embarrassed to come to Tianmu Peak and would not easily come to Tianmu Peak. However, not only were his 2 disciples seriously injured, their souls were also injured. Even if they were in the ancient heaven sect, it would not be easy for them to recover. They would have to pay a heart-wrenching price, and they might not even be able to recover from the injuries to their minds and souls. This was equivalent to directly affecting the future of his 2 disciples. Although a fight between fellow disciples in the ancient heaven sect was not a big deal, there were not many people who would be so ruthless, let alone his own disciple. Therefore, Elder Kong had come to the Heaven-Eye Peak to seek justice. Looking at Du Xiaofu, Elder Kong's gaze was tightly fixed. He opened his mouth and said, "You are Du Xiaofu. Are you the one who severely injured Yutiano and Jing Jizhou?" "That's right. However, I was not ruthless. I only taught them a lesson. If I were ruthless, they would not have the chance to go back and cry." Only then did Du Xiaofu look at Elder Kong. At such a close distance, he could feel the faintly discernible aura on Elder Kong's body. He was even more shocked. Elder Kong's cultivation seemed to be slightly stronger than third senior brother's cultivation. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, many people's expressions changed. At this time, even Yu Wanli was no exception. He was not very clear about the background of this junior brother. Early in the morning, he heard from Elder Kong that his junior brother had seriously injured Yu Tianyo, Jing Jizhou, and dozens of other people. He had some doubts in his heart. Now that he heard this junior brother admitted himself, he could not help but be a little surprised. "Du Xiaofu, what do you mean?" Listening to Du Xiaofu's words, Yu Tianyo and Jing Jizhou's expressions became very ugly. Du Xiaofu said that they were crying. He did not put them in his eyes at all and insulted them again. When the handsome young man of 23 to 24 years old heard this, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a cold aura. His gaze unexpectedly fluctuated a little. "Ha ha!" Elder Kong was stunned for a moment, then he laughed loudly. Everyone could hear the extreme displeasure in his laughter. When he stopped laughing, his face suddenly became gloomy. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Boy, you have guts. According to the sect rules, you should be punished for severely injuring your fellow disciples." Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Kong. His gaze was neither servile nor overbearing. He looked directly at Elder Kong and said, "May I ask, Elder, have you investigated why they fought with me? Who was right and who was wrong?" Listening to Du Xiaofu's words, Jing Jizhou and Yu Tiano's pale faces became even paler. Hearing this, Elder Kong was stunned. It seemed that he did not expect the boy in front of him to be so fearless in front of him. As for the investigation, Elder Kong had already more or less figured it out. How could he not know what the inner sect disciples were like in front of the outer sect disciples? The Manchu had always turned a blind eye to this kind of thing. Elder Kong knew better than anyone what his disciples were like in front of the outer sect disciples. Furthermore, this boy was new. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu directly asked who was right and who was wrong. This made Elder Kong stunned. However, as an elder of the ancient heaven sect, he naturally would not be frightened by Du Xiaofu. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said in a low voice, "No matter who was right and who was wrong, you should not have been so heavy-handed. Elder, I was bullied for no reason yesterday. If my cultivation was a little weaker yesterday, the one who was injured today would be me. Elder, would you punish your 2 disciples?" Du Xiaofu heard this and continued to ask. Elder Kong's face suddenly stiffened. If it were his 2 disciples who had injured Du Xiaofu yesterday, he would be fine as long as he was still alive. He was just a new disciple. Even if he was crippled, as long as he was alive, nothing would happen to him. However, there were some things that everyone in the Manchu knew in secret. Everyone knew some unwritten rules and regulations, but once these things were brought out in public, it would not look good for anyone's face. Elder Kong was a little angry. This brat did not even have the slightest bit of respect in front of him. The purpose of his visit this time around was not to do anything to this brat. At most, he would just punish him a little. His main purpose was to find the Heavenly Peak and ask for some benefits for his two disciples to recover from their injuries. However, at this moment, Elder Kong was angered by Du Xiaofu's rebuttal. He looked at Du Xiaofu with a gloomy face and said, "Brat, I have to say that you are very bold." As soon as he finished speaking, a faint oppressive aura spread out from Elder Kong's body and enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. Boom! The aura spread out as if it wanted to freeze the space. A great invisible suppressive force immediately enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. At this moment, a chill suddenly surfaced in Du Xiaofu's eyes, which had been neither servile nor overbearing. This Elder Kong did not care about Du Xiaofu's status and actually wanted to attack him. There was no need to give him any face. "Elder Kong, that should be enough." At this moment, Yuanli's figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. A faint aura spread out from his body at the same time. There was still a faint smile on his face, as if he would never be angry. As soon as third senior appeared in front of him, Du Xiaofu immediately felt the pressure around him decrease greatly. "Yuanli, you must give me an explanation today." Elder Kong's eyes trembled as he faced Yuanli. "Explanation? What kind of explanation do you want?" Yuanli smiled faintly as he looked at Elder Kong. Just as his final words sounded out, his smiling face suddenly turned dark and expressionless. He looked directly at Elder Kong and said, "Elder Kong, do you think that my Heavenly Peak is easy to bully? Since you have come to my Heavenly Peak to demand an explanation, why don't you look for the sect leader to judge the consequences of your disciple offending his superior?" Elder Kong was stunned when he saw Yuanli's face suddenly change color. After which, he asked doubtfully, "Offending his superior? What offending his superior?" Chapter 602. Humph! Yuanli snorted, looking straight at Elder Kong, and said in a deep voice, "Du Xiaofu is my master's most recent disciple, and also my junior brother. He is master's intersect disciple, and according to the seniority of the sect, he calls you senior brother, so naturally he is your martial uncle." After pausing for a moment, Yuanli looked at Elder Kong and said indifferently, "Your disciple offended his superior and dared to be rude to his martial uncle. Elder Kong, you have really taught your disciple well. I thought you would bring your disciple here to apologize. I didn't expect that you would want martial uncle to apologize to martial nephew. You are ignoring the sect rules and not putting the sect leader in your eyes." Elder Kong's expression kept changing as Yuanli spoke. In the end, his expression became uglier and uglier. Du Xiaofu was also slightly stunned at this moment. Listening to the words of his third senior brother, it seemed that as a disciple of his master, his position in the sect was extremely high, and he was of the same generation as Elder Kong. Du Xiaofu was also surprised by his third senior brother, Yuanli. He always had a smile on his face and seemed like a nice guy. However, once his third senior changed his expression, he wouldn't be polite at all. This kind of person was definitely not to be trifled with. Once he was trifled with, his opponent wouldn't even have the chance to kneel down and beg for mercy. Elder Kong's expression was extremely complicated. Jing Jizhou and Yu Tianyou's expressions were even more interesting. When they heard that Du Xiaofu was Elder Gu Qingyang's direct disciple, their hearts trembled violently. Jing Jizhou and Yu Tianyou naturally knew what Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple meant. They originally thought that he was just a new disciple. If they knew that he was Elder Gu Qingyang's direct disciple, they wouldn't have dared to make a move. Elder Kong's expression was complicated. At this moment, he didn't know what to do. This Du Xiaofu was actually Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple. It would be difficult for him to get any benefits from this. "My Tianmu Peak is quite lively this early in the morning." An indifferent voice came from the distant sky. When the last word fell, a white-robed old man in his 70s had already appeared in front of everyone. Under the rays of the rising sun, the mountain peak was enchanting in the clouds. His white beard fluttered in the wind, his white robe fluttered, and his white hair was half tied up and half scattered. What a sage-like appearance! Naturally, it was Elder Gu Qingyang. Greetings, Master. Yuanli and Du Xiaofu, both Elder Gu Qingyang Yuanli and Yuanli instantly. Yuanli was relieved. With his master's arrival, Elder Gu Yuanli was Yuanli. Was Elder Gu Qingyang. Greetings, Elder Gu. Elder Kong's expression changed when he saw Elder Gu Qingyang's figure. He immediately cupped his hands together and bowed. Jing Jizhou, Yu Tianyo, and the other disciples behind him also lowered their heads respectfully. No need for formalities. Elder Gu Qingyang looked around. He seemed to be in a good mood. He then looked at Elder Kong and said softly, Elder Kong, are you here at Tianmu Peak so early in the morning to see me? This. Elder Kong's expression became a little awkward when he saw Elder Gu Qingyang. When Yuanli saw this, he untimely said to Elder Gu Qingyang, Master, Elder Kong came to Tianmu Peak early in the morning because 2 of his disciples were injured by Junior Brother. He hopes that Master can give him an explanation. Elder Kong's expression became even more awkward when he heard this. Yuanli's words were unfavorable to him, but he couldn't refute it. Oh! When he heard this, Elder Gu Qingyang was stunned for a moment. He glanced at Du Xiaofu, then looked at Elder Kong and softly said, Elder Kong, is this matter possible? Elder Kong's expression was a little awkward. He lifted his head to look at Elder Gu Qingyang and smiled bitterly. Elder Gu, it's actually not a big deal. It's just that 2 of my useless disciples were seriously injured by your new disciple. It's common for disciples to spar in the sect. I'm here to take a look. I'll leave now. Is that so? If this matter is true, we can't let it go so easily. When he heard Elder Kong's words, Elder Gu Qingyang's rosy face instantly raised his eyebrows. His eyes narrowed as he turned to look at Du Xiaofu and said, Xiaofu, did you injure someone? Yes, Master. Du Xiaofu nodded. There was naturally nothing to hide in front of his master, Gu Qingyang. In fact, there was nothing to hide. Xiaofu, you're in the wrong here. You've only just entered my sect, how could you injure a disciple of mine? And to such a serious extent. It was unknown what Elder Gu Qingyang's intention was, but he actually secretly scolded Du Xiaofu. He then looked at Elder Kong and said, Elder Kong, although Xiaofu is my disciple, he's still a junior in terms of age. Since this is a matter between the juniors, let them settle it themselves. According to the Manchu's rules, let them settle it at the Sky Marshal Plaza. Let's go to the Sky Marshal Plaza. When they heard this, Yu Tianyi and Jing Jizhou's expressions became incomparably ugly. The Sky Marshal Plaza was a special place in the ancient Heaven sect. There weren't too many Manchu rules in the Sky Marshal Plaza. Things like snatching treasures and fighting could be done there. If there were any conflicts between the disciples of the ancient Heaven sect, they would also settle it at the Sky Marshal Plaza. In short, there wouldn't be any consequences as long as no one died on the Sky Marshal Plaza. At this moment, Yu Tianyi and Jing Jizhou had already been seriously injured by Du Xiaofu when they were at their peak yesterday. Now that both of them had suffered serious injuries, wouldn't they be looking for trouble if they still went to the Sky Marshal Plaza? Elder Kong's expression was somewhat helpless. This was clearly Elder Gu Qingyang protecting his disciples. He clearly knew that his 2 disciples were seriously injured, yet he still went to the Sky Marshal Plaza. Wasn't this clearly showing that he was protecting his own disciples? Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang, Elder Kong could only say, Elder Gu, my 2 good-for-nothing disciples are seriously injured. I'm afraid they won't be able to enter the Sky Marshal Plaza. Why don't we just let it go? How can we just let it go? Although Xiaofu is my disciple, he's not an exception. How can I casually injure the disciples of the Manchu? Elder Gu Qingyang didn't seem to intend to let it go. He looked at Elder Kong and smiled. Elder Kong, I've always been a fair person. How about this? Your 2 disciples are seriously injured and naturally won't be able to enter the Sky Marshal Plaza. Why don't you find someone from the same sect to replace them? You can find the strongest disciple around the same age as them and go to the Sky Marshal Plaza. As long as they win, I'll take out a mid-grade Tao artifact and 2 king-grade profound pills to give them some benefits. What do you think? As soon as Elder Gu Qingyang finished speaking, Elder Kong, who had thought that Elder Gu Qingyang was being protective of his son, had a puzzled expression on his face. Yu Wanli, who was standing behind Elder Gu Qingyang, also had a puzzled look on his face. His master was giving away medicinal pills and Tao artifacts to that Kong fellow. A mid-grade Tao artifact and 2 king-grade mystical-level medicinal pills were shockingly valuable. It was definitely a big deal. Although that Kong fellow had quite a few disappointing disciples, there were also quite a few experts among them. What made Yu Wanli even more puzzled was that his master seemed to be a different person today. If someone dared to come to Tianmu Peak to cause trouble, his master's temper would definitely be violent. How could he be so easy to deal with? This, after Elder Kong pondered for a while, he also couldn't make up his mind. He really didn't know what Elder Gu Qingyang was planning in his heart. Elder Kong knew that this Elder Gu Qingyang in front of him was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Furthermore, he was a troublesome master. He was also puzzled in his heart. Why was Gu Qingyang so easy to talk to this time? Master, why don't I replace Junior Brother Yu and Junior Brother Jing to go to the Sky Marshal Plaza? At this moment, the handsome young man in short clothes, who had been silent all this time, took a step forward and said to Elder Kong. The side of his face was sharp and angular, but his temperament was slightly cold. Elder Kong looked at the short-clothed young man and his eyes secretly moved. He then slightly gritted his teeth and looked at Elder Gu Qingyang. He said, Elder Gu, what do you think? Elder Gu Qingyang looked at the handsome young man in short robes and smiled slightly. He then looked at Elder Kong and said, Of course, there's no problem. This new disciple of mine is young and full of vigor. I should let him know that the Ancient Heaven sect has as many experts as there are clouds in the sky. In the future, he should cultivate properly. However, Elder Kong, I took out a mid-grade Tao artifact and 2 king-grade Profound Realm medicinal pills. If news of this spreads, I won't have a good time. After hearing Elder Gu Qingyang's words, Elder Kong seemed to understand. He hesitated for a moment, then said with a smile, I understand. As long as your disciple wins, I will also take out a middle-grade Tao artifact and 2 king-grade mysterious elixirs. I wonder if Elder Gu is satisfied? Good, it's a deal. 7 days later, we will meet at the Heaven Marshal Plaza. Elder Gu Qingyang nodded his head in satisfaction. Elder Gu, I'm afraid 7 days won't do. The second intersect disciple selection will be held in 7 days. Elder Kong said without a trace. How about 3 days? 3 days later, how about we meet at the Heaven Marshal Plaza? 3 days. Elder Gu Qingyang raised his eyebrows, then smiled slightly and said, 3 days it is. 3 days later, we will let the youngsters settle their own matters at the Heaven Marshal Plaza. Okay, I will see you in 3 days. Elder Gu, I will also take my leave. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Kong led the group of disciples to bid farewell and left. Readers who saw Xiao Yu's Weibo post should know that I pulled an all-nighter last night. I wanted to explode today, but Lenovo's computer changed its configuration and automatically shut down. As a result, I can't find the manuscript I pulled an all-nighter on. Even if you beat me to death, I will never buy Lenovo's book again. On average, it will automatically shut down once every 3 days. I am also a computer idiot. I just rushed out 2 chapters. Xiao Yu continued to write. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.